Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Coach Renz, and welcome to the podcast. Today is Tuesday. What is wrong with the Bible as we read it? Since we were challenged to read the book because we don't know what we're talking about, so we need to read the book. So we're gonna read the book, and we've been reading the book. If you're finding me for the first time, we most of the time we deconstruct religion. We are religious deconstructors. We own Smoking Phoenix Cigar Lounge, so I'm about to light my cigar. Uh, oh gosh, this eye looks horrible. But we deconstruct religion on this channel. We also talk about spirituality and growth and coming into your own spirituality. Um, we also talk about some current events, things that are going on in the world, how we can better. Part of growing spiritually is to be an improvement to society and look for improvements in society. So we talk about those things from time to time as well, as far as personal and personal development. Today, however, is Tuesday. So Tuesday, we are Tuesday is our deconstruction of the Bible day, where we actually literally are reading the Bible. Move this a little bit and breaking it down as we see it, as we read it. A little bit off today. If you can't tell, this eye is very red and it is incredibly light sensitive, which kind of lets me know what's going on. So, let me know who you are, where you're from when you come on, as I am almost prepared today. Make sure we're on the right part here for our reading. Leviticus 14 and 15. If you was here with us, if you haven't been with us, then and you wanted to catch up, you wanted to see some of the other, you're interested in Genesis or you're interested in Exodus, then you can go to my YouTube channel. And on my YouTube channel, Why I Left Religion with Coach Renz, you will see, hey, Luis, how you doing? I don't think I've ever, from the UK. Um, if you haven't watched us, if you haven't seen the other chapters, you can go to my YouTube channel. There's a playlist. Quincy Jones making music. We have a playlist, and on that playlist you can go back and look at all the ones from Genesis, um, Genesis and Exodus. All the lives are there. Now, in advance, I want to thank everybody who donates to the channel, whether it's through stars or financial donations or gifts, whatever it is. I just want to go ahead and put that out there. That I do appreciate that. But please share the videos. Share the videos. Share and comment. Share and comment. So, Tuesday, we literally are going to read this book. We are reading it. I don't know how far we're going to ever go in it. I can't see you reading the whole thing. That takes not at this pace. So because we started a little bit late, usually I give them about 5 minutes for people to get on YouTube and Facebook, and we're on TikTok as well. So because this eye hurts, I have one contact in. Trying to figure out which way is going to be a better way to read. Okay, we're going to try without the glasses. Yeah, I don't want to be that close to the camera. Let me see. All right, we're going to figure it out. Yeah, I think this way is going to be better without the glasses. All right. So excuse my little eye here. I know it has an infection. I don't know. According to some of these people, it's probably my devil eye. It's my demon eye is coming through. All right. So if you was with us the last week, then we went through the beginnings of. Hold on for 1 second because it's more. I forgot to turn the air conditioner. But we went through the beginnings of what it looks like, how they created the leper colonies, and dealing with people with leprosy. And how, of course, the blood coat of this religion is all about we got to kill something in order to get rid of the leprosy. And the isolation that they did with people to get rid of leprosy, which had absolutely no scientific basis in it whatsoever. These were just customs that people made up. And this one is going to be dealing with leprosy again. We're going to deal with leprosy of the person when they're clean, and then we'll deal with leprosy of your house. Did you know your house can get leprosy? So let's see what we got here. So in chapter 14 of Leviticus, what's wrong with the Bible? Let's get started. So the Lord said to Moses, these are the regulations for any diseased person at the time of their ceremonial cleansing when they are brought to the priest. The priest is to go outside the camp and examine them. If they have been healed of their defiling skin disease, the priest shall order that 2 live birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, hyssop be brought to the person to be cleansed. So we're in the leper colony again. So we got the people out in the leper colony because you can't keep them inside that with you. So they're separating the people. That's actually a good thing. But as always with this book, it has to go dark. Then the priest shall order that one of the birds be killed over fresh water in a clay pot. He is then to take the live bird and dip it in it. He is then to take the live bird and dip it in the bloody water bath, together with the cedar wood and the scarlet yarn and the hyssop, into the blood of the bird that was killed over the fresh water. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one with the cleansed. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the defiling disease, and then pronounce him clean. After that, he is to release the live bird into the open field. Let me paint the scene for you. You are a person that had leprosy or defiling skin disease. You were living in the leper camp. Priest comes out to examine you, make sure that you're clean. The way that they know that you're clean, after they decide that you're clean, they're going to take 2 birds, slaughter 1 bird, let his blood pour over into a pot of water, throw the hyssop and the cedar wood in there, dip the live bird into the fresh water, shake the bird so that the water blood sprinkle all over you. Do this 7 times, and then release the bird out into the wild. So this bird who's traumatized already because he just watched the other bird get murdered. Now this bird is traumatized because it's been dunked in this water 7 times, this bloody water 7 times, and sprinkling and been shaken over a person. And then the bloody bird is sent out into the wild after being in the leprosy camp. For all they know, they had avian flu. This is the science. No, this is not science. The next time a person who is Christian or Muslim or any of them, ask them, do they believe in magic? Ask them if they believe in magic. And then go read them some of this. And then ask them again if they believe in magic. Grand Rising Willie, how you doing? Because effectively, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at some magic. Some superstitious magic. To continue. The person to be cleansed must wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe with water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. After this, they may come into the camp, but they must stay outside their tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, they must shave off all their hair. They must shave their head, their beards, their eyebrows, and the rest of their hair. You know what they're talking about, the rest of their hair. They must wash their clothes and bathe themselves with water, and they will be clean. They will be clean. So now you already said you were cleaning out in the leprosy camp. Now you get to come home, but you got to sit outside your place for 7 days. So you still, and then they're gonna say you're clean. So when are you actually clean? It's pointless to tell me that I'm clean in the leprosy camp, and then I get home, and then you tell me I got to go through this part. Now I'm clean, and then we continue. On the 8th day, they must bring 2 male lambs, and y'all already know what's gonna happen to these lambs. We already know what's gonna happen to the lambs. It's the Bible. What do you expect to happen to the lamb? I'll give you a guess of what they're gonna do to the lambs, and 1 ewe lamb. So you got 2 male lambs and 1 baby lamb. And 1 ewe lamb, a year old, each without defect, along with 3/10 of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil for the grain offering, and 1 log of oil. The priest who pronounces them clean shall present both the one to be cleansed and their offering before the Lord as an entrance to the tent of meetings. So the preacher got to get his money, and their money is going to be the portions of the offering that the priests get to keep, and the damn grain offering, because it already got some oil in it. And we've already know from reading earlier parts of Leviticus, that once you put oil in the flour, then it's for the priest. So priests got to have their money. Then the priest is to take 1 of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering, along with the log of oil. He shall wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. Now we know that there's going to be some slaughtering. He is to slaughter the lamb in the sanctuary area where the sin offering and the burnt offering are slaughtered like the sin offering. The guilt offering belongs to the priest. Got to get their part. It is most holy. The priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and pour it into the loaves and put it on the lobes of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Doesn't that sound like magic? It sounds like magic. It sounds like witchcraft. So when they say that their book doesn't teach us witchcraft, is doing the same thing that a person in any other religion that especially has animal sacrifice or uses talismans and things would do. Theirs is animal sacrifice and blood, and now you're putting blood on my earlobe and blood on my thumb and blood on my toe, and I shaved off all my hair, every piece of hair on my body, and I had bloody bird shake on me. So this is you can't say that your book doesn't teach witchcraft if you're going to categorize it as such. Then here we go. So the big toe of the right foot. The priest shall then take some of the log of oil, pour it on the palm of his own hand, dip his right forefinger into the oil of his palm, into the oil of his palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of it before the Lord 7 times. The priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of the right hand of the one to be cleansed, and on the big toe of their right foot, on the top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one who is being cleansed, to make atonement for them before the Lord. So there again, we are seeing a whole bunch of spells and bloody sacrifice, unnecessary blood sacrifices. So this is truly identifying itself as a blood cult, but it is indicative of how people were in that day. So this is a cultural thing for them. So what is LaQuinn said, for those who do believe in this, why aren't, for those who do believe in this, Why aren't you asking for or requiring the same proof, unambiguous evidence that is Christ's character in the Bible provided the character doubting Thomas within the Bible those 40 days? I also don't understand why people are holding on to something so dearly that that either that flat earthers who are the theists believe in the same people who fought for the Galileo astronomer and the Galileo astronomer and told him that he was wrong, although he was proven to be right. And in this instance, the feasts were wrong. The feasts were wrong and ignorant. So I want to know why people continue to hold on to believe this mess called Christ's faith. They continue to believe it because that's what they grew up believing. The hardest thing to do is to change something that a person has been indoctrinated into since birth. Um, I understand what you're saying, but when a person, the most trusted people in your life from birth have told you that this is the way, this is your salvation, and so you're going to believe them. You want to trust them, and then after that, the very same people are the ones who are terrifying you by saying that your only way that you can go to heaven is this, that if you don't believe this, you're going to go to hell. So fear and conditioning keeps people caught up into this religion. Right. So let's continue to 19, verse 19. This one contact in, one out, light sensitive right eye is interesting. Then the priest is to sacrifice the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed for their uncleanliness. After that, the priest shall slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar together with the grain offering and make atonement for them, and they will be clean. This book spends a lot of time making sure that you understand that you got to do a lot of blood sacrifices and animal sacrifices to this deity in order to win its approval. If, however, they are poor and cannot afford these, they must take one male lamb as a guilt offering and be waved to make atonement for them, together with a tenth of an ephah of the finest flour mixed with olive oil for the grain offering, and a log of oil, and 2 doves and 2 young pigeons, such as they can afford, one for a sin offering and another for a burnt offering. So just because you're poor doesn't mean that you get away with, you don't have to deal with the blood sacrificing. Poverty, be damned. You might be starving, but that pigeon you caught, you got to sacrifice this as your sin offering. So everybody gets to participate in the blood sacrificing. On the eighth day, remember we're still talking about people. These are people who had leprosy. So you had leprosy. You haven't been able to tend to your whole flock, whatever job you was doing, and now you cleanse, but you got to now give up some animals and all that sort of thing. On the 8th day, they must bring them for the cleansing to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meetings before the Lord. The priest is to take the lamb for the guilt offering together with the log of oil and wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. Like, hey, I guess hey, ho, because they doing a lot of waving. He shall slaughter the lamb for a gift offering and take some of his blood and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one who is to be cleansed, and on the thumb and on the right. They just said this. This is one of the most irritating things about this book. It is incredibly repetitive. On the thumb of the right hand and on the big toe of the right foot, the priest is to pour some of the oil on the palm of his own left hand, and with his right hand, his forefinger, sprinkle some of the oil in his palm 7 times before the Lord. Some of the oil of his palm has to be put on the same places that he put the blood on the guilt of the guilt offering, on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand of the one, and on the big toe of the right foot. It said that earlier, but why is it saying it again? It's like they ran out of information. It's when you need, like when you're writing that report and you need to make things longer, we're just going to repeat something that we said a little while a while ago, we inserted that, oh, for poor people, they have to do this. But for the rich, but let's get back to saying the same shit that we just said. Could have said, do it the same way you did it with the previous, when you had 2 lambs and an ewe. You didn't have to go through and say the same stuff again. But they did. The rest of the oil of the palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for them before the Lord. Then he shall sacrifice the doves or a young pigeon, such as the person can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement before the Lord and on behalf of the one to be cleansed. These are the regulations for anyone who has a defiling skin disease and who cannot afford the regular offerings of their cleansing. Yeah, I know why it bothers me so much, because I'm a very direct person. I don't like don't give me all the whole story. Like, I asked a guy a question yesterday. He tells me all this stuff, speaks for 5 minutes, and when he was done, I said, you didn't even answer my question. You was talking, you didn't even answer the question, which was a very simple question. So them having to repeat themselves is quite irritating. And especially when you're repeating yourself over the fact that you're killing these animals and sacrificing these animals because you believe that cleanses you. And especially when you take a bird and you dip another bird in the bloody water of the bird and shake it on the person. That's just disgusting. And you want to call them clean. They just got over leprosy, and now you're trying to give them something else. Grand Rising Debbie, how you doing? Texas in the house. All right. We're still actually in Leviticus 14. This is the last part, though, of Leviticus 14. This is about your house. When your house get leprosy. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when you enter into the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put a spreading mold in a house in that land. And those who see said puts the spreading mold in that house of the land. Your house was fine. But this guy says, and I put a spreading mold in a house in that land. The owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like a defiling mold in my house. So when I lived downtown Atlanta for a while, and one of the buildings that I was in, there was this one window, it had mold. You spray it, didn't matter. We kept complaining, but it didn't matter. I finally moved, and the building was relatively new. Drive by there 2 years later, they had to redo that whole side of the building because it had mold in it. And I understand the spreading mold, the conditions that creates the spreading mold with the humidity and all this sorts of things. But this guy just said that he put the spreading mold in there. Now we know how mold works, but for these people, they have to say that it's always some supernatural aspect to it. And if you're gonna say it's a supernatural aspect, this guy spreads the mold. Why? What's the purpose of this guy spreading this mold? And with mold being something that happens so commonly in certain areas, and these people are living in the mountainous area, well, they're near water. They're near the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, all this kind of stuff. So mold is not something that's going to be uncommon, but it sure sounds like a way for the priest to get some stuff. But this guy puts mold in your house. So if you got mold in your house, God did it. So you go to the house. The priest is to order that the house is to be empty before he goes in to examine the mold. So now the priest is also a house inspector. If you've been with us before in the previous chapters, these priests have been biologists. They have been doctors. They've been architects. They've been everything. The priest is a true Renaissance man, and it's a man because it can't be a woman. They won't let you women be priests. But now he's going and he pronounces the house unclean. He is to examine the mold on the walls, and if it is And if it has greenish or reddish depressions that appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest shall go out the doorway to the house and close it up for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall return to inspect the house. If the mold has spread on the walls, he is to order that the contaminated stones be torn out, and thrown into the unclean place outside the town. He must have all the inside walls of the house scraped, and the material that is scraped off dumped into the unclean place outside of town. Then he has to take some other stones and replace these, and take new clay and plaster the house. I'm telling you, the priest is a man of everything. You can't be no slouch to be a priest. If the defiling mold reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house scraped and plastered, the priest is to go and examine it. And if the mold has spread in the house, it is a persistent defiling mold. The house is unclean. Well, I would think so. It must be torn down, its stone timbers and all the plaster, and taken out from the town to the unclean place. I actually did some of that when I went to after Katrina down in New Orleans. We had to tear down some of those houses; they couldn't be saved. But they're trying to keep the mold from spreading. How is this the priest's job? I don't know. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps or eats in the house must wash their clothes. For their time frame, this is good hygiene and good practice. I point out when something is good. But if the priest comes to examine it and the mold is not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the defiling mold is gone. To purify the house, he has to take two. God damn it! Can't we just get through the cleansing or something without killing some birds or doves or something? There's always this blood cult is always trying to kill something. He has to take 2 birds and some cedar wood and scarlet yarn and hyssop. He shall kill one of the birds over the fresh water of the clay pot. Yes, this is the same as before with the leprosy. Then he has to take the clear cedar wood and the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, dip them into the blood of the dead bird and the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. You just got rid of mold in your house, so now you got bloody water bird juice oily all over your house because they had to do this 7 times. These people are sick. He shall purify the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, and the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. Then he is to release the live bird in the open field outside the town. In this way, he will make atonement for the house, and it will be cleansed. Okay, what did the house do wrong? Well, it doesn't explain what the house did wrong. I mean, it just literally said, this guy said, I will put this mold in, that I put this mold in your house. That's all this guy. I put the mold in your house. It doesn't say that you defiled it, you had something going on with you slapped your husband, you slapped your wife, you kicked the cat. It don't say nothing like that. It just said this guy I just decided I want to put a little mold in your house. And now you got to go through all of this stuff. Let me finish this one. These are the regulations for the any defiling skin disease, for a sore, a defiling mold in fabrics or in a house, for a swelling rash or shiny spot, to determine when something is clean or unclean. These are the regulations for defiling skin disease and defiling molds. We have spent at least three chapters, just talking about skin disease and defiling molds. But we're not going to say anything about slavery other than one little part to let you know that it's okay to have slaves. And you know it's going to be a good day when we get to that part in Leviticus. When they talk about things like murder or something like that in the punishment, it's one little part. But anytime it's about atonement, goddamn, 3 chapters for just skin disease. And guess what? We're about to have a whole chapter on when you got juices flowing out your poom poom and your ping ping. I want to know after we read chapter 15, if any of y'all ever have been in a church, Sunday school, and you actually have read this chapter in a class type environment. Not that you were just reading it yourself, but this is what your preacher preached on. This is what they taught you in Sunday school. Because I would not teach my kids this part here. But we finna talk about discharges coming out your ping ping and your poom poom. Because that's what God wants to talk about, this deity. Grand Rising, cool boys. All right. Chapter 15 in Leviticus. And what's wrong with the Bible with Coach Renz. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, just like the other chapter started, the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any man has an unusual bodily discharge, such a discharge is unclean. Whether it continues flowing from his body or is blocked, it will make him unclean. This is how his discharge will bring about uncleanliness. Any bed the man with the discharge lies on will be unclean. Anything he sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches his bed must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. Whoever sits on anything that the man with the discharge sat on must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean until evening. We are talking about them having some type of flowing STD, most likely, or some type of bacterial infection that's coming out of man ping ping, looking like, I don't know what it looked like, but looking like something. Whoever touches the man who has the discharge must wash their clothes and bathe with water, or they will be unclean till evening. Because the word just said that, like they have copy paste going. If the man with the discharge spits on anyone who is unclean, they must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean. I can tell you one thing. Let me learn y'all something today. Y'all saw the video when I cussed dude out, right? That dude could walk in, be apologetic. We having a nice conversation. I'm good. If a man spit on me, and we had this conversation in here, a bunch of men, we rather you cuss us out, call us out of our name. You can even go as far as slapping us. But if you spit on me, oh, I'm going to be unclean because I'm finna whoop his assets all day long. If a man, they literally had to give a whole thing. If a man spits on you, like, is that common? That is not, actually, it's not common. To spit on somebody, even back then, was a sign of disrespect and you disgrace, and that's disgraceful thing to do. But shit, it's impossible to know. Example, restaurants could be sitting on the chair, right? How do you know if a man? Thank you, Luis. Is it no Louisa? Sorry. You go to a restaurant, some man having a discharge. You don't know if he's having a discharge. And mind you, your Bible doesn't get rid of all of these things when you go into Jesus. He didn't say he came to get rid of the law, but to fulfill the law. You're still held accountable for all these things. I'm going to ask a Jewish person, how do you go and sit in a restaurant not knowing whether or not that man has a discharge or not? I'm going to find one. How do they handle that? All right. I'm sorry. The spitting part just threw me off, though. Spits on you. Oh, He spat on me. Yeah, you unclean because he spat on you, but you do doubly unclean because this joker he's discharging. And how do you know he's discharging? You know, if you just in the neighborhood, you know what I'm saying? Well, I thought was me alone started following Coach Renz doing your okay. Oh, you talking to cousin? All right, so okay, let's continue. Okay, I'm sure other men understand how another man spitting on you. That's a little disconcerting there. Ooh, just make you feel some kind of way. He'd be spitting on me. God damn. All right. Where we at? Verse 9. No, yeah, verse 9. Everything a man sits on when riding will be unclean. And whoever touches any of the things, didn't they already say this? That were under him will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up those things must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. You see how it's very repetitive, like they really are trying to fill some space. Anyone the man with the discharge touches without rinsing his hands with water must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean. Anyone, anyone the man is the discharge toucher. So if he rinses his hands, then he can touch you, and then you're not unclean. But if he don't rinse his hands, so wash your damn hands. A clay pot that the man touches must be broken. Any wooden articles is to be rinsed with water. So, okay, they got a lot of clay pot breaking stuff. When a man is cleansed from his discharge, he is to count off 7 days from his ceremonial cleansing. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with fresh water. He will be clean. But of course, on the 8th day, we must take 2 doves and 2 young pigeons and come before the Lord to the entrance of the tent of meetings and give them to the priest. Gotta have some animal sacrificing with this blood coat. The priest is to sacrifice sacrifice them, the one for the sin offering and the other for the burnt offering. In this way, he will make atonement before the Lord for the man because of his discharge. At least this time they're not going all into how the sacrificing was going, to splitting the bird, ripping the bird by its wings, but not ripping it totally apart and snapping the neck and draining the blood and all this sort of thing, cutting out certain entrails, and then it burn on the fire, and what a sweet aroma it is to this deity. But they do enough of their repetitiveness in here. So that's how the man got his atonement. When a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body with water, and he will be unclean till evening. So when you having that wet dream at night, when you masturbate, if the semen is going anywhere but inside the woman at any time frame, you are unclean. Any clothing or leather that has semen on it must be washed with water, and it will be unclean till evening. If it's another man's, you damn right it's unclean. When a man has sexual relations with a woman and there is an emission of semen, both of them must bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. Hold up. Hold the phone. When a man has sexual relation with a woman, doesn't that mean that woman is his wife according to this book? So, because when you have sex with a woman, she becomes your wife. Now, of course, they had their prostitutes and they had these kinds of things, and they committed their adulteries. But adultery was only having sex with a woman who was married to another man. So therefore, they are still unclean. But if they catch them, but if they know that these two people who are both married and the woman is married and she has sex, then that's adultery. Then they get killed instead of there being a cleansing ritual. So who is the woman that you just having a sexual relationship with that's not your wife? Because this should always be your wife. This is your wife in this book. But we'll go ahead with their bullshit. When a man has sex relations with a woman and there's an emission of semen. Both must bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. So if it is referring to your wife, every time you have sex with your wife, you are unclean till evening. So if you have morning sex, y'all unclean till evening. Ooh, you couldn't be, boy, if you was one of them couples that like to get it in every day, y'all just dirty all the time. Y'all ain't having no guests, no house guests. Now we're gonna get into the woman. When a woman has her regular flow of blood, the impurity of her monthly period will last 7 days, and anyone who touches her will be unclean till evening. Now, isn't it interesting that this is something that is not a rule, not talked about until we get here in Leviticus, but in Genesis, we saw where Rachel used this thing about her being on her period, this impurity of her monthly period, in order to steal her father Laban's idols. But we know also that these books were written pretty much at the same time. And how could, even if you looked at it chronologically, Moses comes after Rachel. Rachel was definitely born before Rachel, if these people are real, but they're not. But Rachel comes before them. So how does Rachel know these rules? But God is just now this God is just now telling Moses and Aaron. Now, nope, that wouldn't work, because they were still, according to this book, they were still practicing and believing in the Yahweh when they was in Egypt. So it's not that they forgot. Nope. Thought I had a convincing argument against my own statement, but I don't. All right. So women, every time y'all on y'all period, y'all are unclean, even though the period itself is a cleansing process. But hey, they didn't know biology. Anything she lies on during her period will be unclean, and anything she sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches her bed will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. Anyone who touches anything she sits on will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water. They need some soap too, and they will be unclean till evening, whether it is the bed or anything she was sitting on. When anyone touches it, they will be unclean till evening. Now, I will tell you this, guys. When I was younger and I was believing in this book, I understood even back then that, look, the teachings of this Jesus are, the teachings of this book is such that these rules are still to be regarded. And when I first got married at 19 years old, I still kept these rules. When she would be on her cycle, she had to sleep in a different bed, or I would sleep on, well, we didn't have two beds, but I would go sleep on the sofa because, and she couldn't sit on the sofa anytime. She had to sit on the bed. And I literally followed this type of mentality. And when I went to Saudi Arabia, I was a house guest at these, they had like the intermilitary exchange kind of deal. And the wives, as plural, will have a separate kitchen, separate living spaces for when they was on a cycle. So there literally are some people in this world who do conform to this. And I did so for a while myself. All right. Unfortunately for you men, I'm laughing. Sorry, it's other punkers. I know it is. Oh, but it gets even better, Louisa. If a man has sexual relations with her and her monthly flows touches him, he will be unclean for 7 days. Any bed he lies on will be unclean. So y'all getting it? And I don't care who you are. If you've had sex with some person consistently for a year, at least a year, it has happened. Well, y'all getting it. She knows she close to that time, but she really don't know. It's close, but she don't know. And in the midst of y'all getting it, that cycle start. And you ain't gonna stop. Most of y'all, you don't stop. I ain't stop. And there are the times that you go in and you don't even know it until you do stop and turn it, and more light comes in, or you go to the bathroom and clean up, or you go get that hot towel. Y'all know about that hot towel, gentlemen. Y'all need to learn about that hot towel. I'm telling y'all right now. Y'all finishing everything and she's still tingly, you go get a real hot towel and you clean her up and press it and rub it around. Get that hot towel. Anyway, but So you having period, you getting it. She starts it. Now both of y'all unclean for 7 days. And then of course some dudes, it doesn't matter. She on her period, don't care. There ain't nothing but extra lubrication. To continue, when a woman has a discharge of blood for many days at a time, other than her monthly period, or has a discharge that continues beyond her period, she will be unclean as long as she has the discharge, just as in the days of her period. Oh, I do want to throw in there. Um, some Christians have tried to argue this point that a woman, when she's on a period, is not considered unclean because the woman who had the 7-year issue, once she touched Jesus, she was then declared clean. But she touched his cloak. She did not touch him personally. So he wouldn't have been unclean, but his cloak would have been unclean. But they didn't say anything about his cloak being unclean. They just kind of left that part for your imagination. But it still doesn't negate the idea that when a woman's on her period, she is unclean. Because this woman had a condition that was going on, and that is more in line to this continuous blood coming from her. But they'll try to use that to say that when a woman is on her period, she is not unclean anymore because of the woman who touched him with his cloak. And that doesn't add up. That's a reach. So any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean. Wait a minute, I just thought about it. This woman was fighting through a crowd, so she was just uncleaning. She was just uncleaning everybody in the crowd. I've never thought about that. She just like unclean, 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 unclean. You know, somebody would have snatched that woman up long before she got that far. I've never thought about that till just now. All right. So any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean, as is her bed during her monthly period. And anything she sits on will be unclean, as during her period. Anyone who touches them will be unclean. They must wash their clothes and bathe with water, and they will be unclean till evening. When she is cleansed from her discharge, she must count off 7 days, and after she will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, can't win. I can't win. This book constantly want to kill all the animals for nothing. You know, if you kill an animal and you eat the animal, I'm not, I ain't gonna be mad. That happens. That does. But this is some bullshit. The burnt offering is consumed by this God. So really, we got to keep killing animals for you because of a natural biological thing that women have from the beginning. Why wasn't Eve having to cleanse with the bird and the killing of the birds? You don't see anything about Eve having to do all of this. Not at all. It doesn't say anything concerning it. She was having a period, and yet she didn't have to kill some birds. Even after so-called sin entered the world, there was none of this. On the 8th day, she must take 2 doves and 2 young pigeons, and bring them to the priest at the entrance of the tent of meetings. I could read that without even reading it because the Bible has repeated itself so many times that I literally, that whole line, because I only got one contact in and this eye is red and light sensitive, I can't see that line. But it has been so repetitive that I didn't even read it and I read it. The priest is to sacrifice one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. In this way, he will make atonement for her before the Lord for the uncleanliness of her discharge. Now, notice it didn't say anything about if a woman has any other bodily discharge, right? It just talked about discharge that are like a period discharge. But hey, you must keep the Israelites separate from things that make them unclean. So they will not die in this uncleanliness of defiling my dwelling places, which is among them, because this deity got to have a clean place. Kill all the animals, sprinkle blood all over the place, but it got to be clean. These are the right regulations for a man with a discharge For for anyone made unclean by the emission of semen, for a woman in her monthly period, for a man or woman with a discharge, and for a man who has sexual relations. So my bad, it does say a woman with a discharge has sexual relation with the woman who is ceremonially unclean. That's the end of that chapter. I've never heard any preacher preach on this at all. Ain't never, ever. The only time that this has been brought up is that during debate or conversation that I've had with a pastor or preacher or somebody like this. Like before I got married. Before I got married was one of the like 12th times that I've read the Bible. And before I got married, I was asking the preacher, I was say, look, according to the Bible, when she's on her period, she's considered unclean. I'm not supposed to touch her. I'm not supposed to touch anything that she touches. I'm not supposed to sit on anything that she sat on, not lie in the bed when she's laying out. And I was like, how do you do that in your house? Because I automatically assumed he did. And when he said he doesn't do that, and I was like, okay, what is your rationale? And he was like, well, we don't have to follow all those Old Testament laws. I was like, why? Because your Jesus, well, I didn't say back then, I wasn't saying your Jesus. I was saying Jesus said that he came for the fulfillment, but not to take one tittle away from the law, which means the law is still valid. He also said, if you're going to love my Father and keep his commandments, these are part of his commandments. He also said that the forgiveness, the taking on of sin that he's taking on is for the day of judgment, not for your everyday life as you continue to go. So, how do you get by this? And he really didn't have an answer. And then I talked to about 5 other preachers, and they didn't have an answer because he just, sent me on up the chain, and none of them had an answer. So I just realized, you know what? The answer is I'm right, and they just don't know, and they so caught up into culture that they just don't want to do this thing right. So I was going to do it right, and I did. And it was a pain in the ass. Do you know how hard it is when you are a young, broke ass couple living in a trailer outside of a military base and you trying to say, okay, during your cycle, this is my chair, don't sit in this chair? You know, I will cook for myself on those days. I'm sleeping on the chair wasn't mine, the sofa was mine because I had to sleep on the sofa. I did it because I was serious about this thing. And it didn't make for a great beginning, of the relationship. That was always a interesting little 5 to 7 days. But we couldn't do any animal sacrifice and that sort of thing because that was illegal. So we had some chicken. And I would literally, one chicken had to be completely burnt. We burned this whole chicken. It's for the Lord. Now in Ifa, right, it's a similar thing, but except they don't burn the chicken or the goat or whatever. After they cook it, they set it outside, and if it's gone by morning, then it is accepted by the Orisha. Of course, I set up one night and I watched the dogs come and eat all the meat, come and eat it. So I guess the Orisha came down in the canines and they ate it. But what do that? And that's my thing. If you're going to follow this book, you're supposed to be doing these things. And said, but the ones doing all the killing are the ones killing. They are coming to save man. Yeah, exactly. The one doing all the killing is the one that's supposed to be coming to save man. You can't. That means they need to save themselves from themselves. But realistically, like when I talk to people who are Hebrew Israelites, I ask them, "Do you follow all these rules? Are you committed to these animal sacrifices?" The same thing when I talk to Jewish people and anybody else who's touting this Old Testament. You know, I know Christians are always going to give me the excuse of Jesus, but the Jesus excuse doesn't pan out. It doesn't work. It's invalid. That's not what the Jesus came for. So when you're having this discussion with anybody, ask them, are they keeping holding truth to this? I guarantee they're not. And they're not. Their real reason is because we live in a society that disapproves of this. I told you guys before, as we've been going through all these animal sacrifice things, the person who the Ephah young lady that I know, the person that she gets her animals from is always watchful and mindful, as if it's like a spy network or something going on, because he knows that if all he has to do is get complaints, not illegal for him to have the animals, but if somebody found out why he had these animals, what they were being used for, he's like the main guy in Atlanta that you get your animals for animal sacrifices. He know that he will face all kind of charges, that there will be an uproar. But this is supposed to be a country of religious freedom. If my religion says that I can do animal sacrifices, why can't I do my animal sacrifices? Just asking. Because there should be blood spilling of animals by the millions every day in America. With all the Christians and all the Muslims and all the Jews and all the Ephahs and everybody, there should be animal sacrificing going on in this country. There should be more animal husbandry for the animal sacrifice than there would be animal husbandry for people actually consuming the animal in this country, if people actually follow this book. I am so glad that they do not follow this book, because this is ridiculous for a deity to sit here and says that he requires you to sacrifice animals in order for you to atone for a sickness or a disease that you caught because there was a virus in the air, you know, or because there was mold in your house. Do you know how much mold? I live in the Southeast. I live in Atlanta. Do you know how many people have to deal with mold throughout their lives here in Atlanta? Most people, especially like I have an older house right now. Of course, we have to fight the mold in the bathroom, especially because somebody take them real hot showers and steam up the whole house. It's an exaggeration, but they open the bathroom door and it looked like one of them movies where they come out of the space shuttle and all the damn smoke come out behind them. Whereas that Terrence said that meat would be higher than a mother. It sure would. If they did all this animal sacrifice, the price of meat would skyrocket, and the greenhouse effects would be horrible. But we deal with mold. You're going to deal with mold. Do you know how many people around the Mediterranean, they deal with mold constantly, consistently? But the priests figured out a way to make money off of it, because God put that mold in their house. Can't let there be some scientific, natural explanation for it. They had to specifically say God put the mold in the houses. That way they can get their offering from you. It is a great source of money that these priests have created for themselves in this book that we see in Leviticus, because they did mold out your house, they dealing with mold in your clothes, they dealing with leprosy, they dealing with your cycles, with your sexual diseases. You know, they your gynecologist, everything. They your seamstress, they the home inspector. They gonna get that money out you. They getting it, just like they still getting it today for most of these people. They still getting that money. So what's wrong with this book? What's wrong with these chapters? Why is it What is it that we can also look at? Now, those are more philosophical, lifestyle, cultural things. But scientifically, this book goes against science in the effect of dipping dipping a bird in some bloody water and shaking it all around you does not give you a clean bill of health from leprosy. Taking a bird and doing that same thing and sprinkling around your house does not protect your house from mold. That's magic. It goes against science. You want to protect your house from mold, then there's certain paint that you use, certain ways to seal up your house, and all these, dehumidifiers and all these things to keep the moisture level down. That's not how, that goes against science. Touching something that a woman sitting on a chair that a man or a woman who has a sexually transmitted disease or is going through their monthly cycle or is just having a bacterial flow of something doesn't make the chair unclean. You're not going to catch it from that. If a man gets a UTI, he doesn't get the UTI because he sat in a chair or laid in a bed with his woman who's dealing with a UTI. He got the damn UTI because he was having sex with her. She might have got it because he was having sex with somebody else who had a UTI, gave it to him, and he gave it to her. And a woman on her cycle, there's nothing unclean about it. Absolutely nothing. It's a normal monthly process for a woman's body to cleanse itself after going through a menstrual cycle. Whereas after going through an egg being prepared, being ready to get fertilized. But they didn't know that. For them, it's some God-centric sacrifice, some lambs and ewes and birds and all these sorts of things. So when they say that the Bible is a science book, any person who merely reads the Bible for science and try to take a test will fail. Try to repeat it in a lab will fail. They will just fail. So how can this be the inerrant word of the omnipresent, omnipotent God? This omnipotent God did not know that you can't transmit discharges from your ping ping or your poom poom by sitting in a chair or touching a pot. He didn't know that because there's no reason to write these rules. There really isn't. There's no scientific reason that any of these rules should be written down. Now, if a person has leprosy and things of that nature, do they need to have clean hygiene and all this kind of stuff? Sure. Does cutting off all their hair make any difference in their ability to get rid of any skin disease or to get rid of leprosy? No. Now, I know if you got boils and you got a hair growing in the boil, that I've heard, I don't know, I've heard that they do need to take the hair out of the boil. But beyond that, why are you cutting off all your hair? Where do you cut all your hair off? So he made something unclean. He made you with, well, yeah. He made something unclean that he made you with. It don't make no sense. Now it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But that's how this deity rolls. Because this deity is written and created by people. People are imperfect and people are writing things based on their current culture. They're not basing it on scientific knowledge or facts. I'm telling you, I could write a better Bible today. Just like yesterday, towards the end of our discussion yesterday, I was saying that, I would be a better creator than this creator because I would. Y'all would. All of y'all would be better than this dude, than this creator. Because he's not smart enough, doesn't know enough about science. And I'm pretty sure that whatever I write today, that there's somebody 2,000 years from now will say that, oh, he wasn't smart enough. Because they're going to know more than what we know. They might understand at that point how to enter the fifth dimensional plane and circumvent time and space. There's no telling what they may know. They may know how to create a replicator, and then they can, you know, refill my cup of coffee after I drink it up without having to go and do all the work. I'm sure. But what I do know is that we are all smarter and more moral than this guy. Making a woman feel like she's unclean because she's going through her cycle. Whatever. Shit. During and after that cycle, that's the cleanest that poom poom gonna be. It is at max cleanliness. Oh, I need a minute. My bad. So we done with that part. So we can talk about anything you guys want to talk about now. That King James was an evil con man. Oh man, don't get me started on King James. King James, you know, the only credit that I can give King James is the fact that he realized that in order for him to truly be king of England, that he needed to take control of the religion of England because the Pope was in control of all of that. Like you have your own kingdom, but if the Pope said something, you could be dethroned. So he con man, yes, smart to get the Pope out of his back pocket. Well, Pope was puppeteering all them jokers in Europe. But write some bullshit, added some things in that Bible that don't need to be in there, justify the slave trades and all that. Yeah. Well, to utilize to justify that, which it was already being utilized to justify it, but even more so. Yes, David, the Bible God is very evil. As we have been going through this book, reading it word for word, we come to the realization very early on that this guy is incredibly evil. In the first of Genesis, in Genesis, I did a lot of comparisons of this book to the Sumerian stories. That becomes less and less the more we read through the book, as they are now writing based on their culture that they've developed outside of the Babylonians. So, and we're getting more and more into that now, and they're making up their own rules. But some of these rules are also similar to the Babylonian Sumerian rules, because when you read about the when they worship Molech, Baal, and I'm thinking about doing this video about that. Though their forms of worship were the same, they all use fire to say that their deity was consuming the sacrifice. They would all be sacrificing bulls and lambs and goats and birds and all these sorts of things, and sprinkling blood all over the place, all over altars and them people. And these are not new things that was only for these Israelite people. These were things that the Babylonians were doing, the Arcadians were doing, the Phoenicians were doing. So they were doing the same thing that the other cults were doing, because they came out of the cult of Baal, the cult of Yahweh. The Canaan Yahweh originally was a Canaanite god, storm god, storm deity. You know, and that storm deity was also, Baal, Molech. Because I'm thinking about doing a video about child sacrifice in this book. But evil, yes, this is a very evil God. Just the sense of when I put mold in your house, as a parent, would you go and put mold in your kid's house? What would be the point? Just so they can get kicked out of their house for 7 days. And then as they've kicked out of their house for 7 days, they then have to go and give some sacrifices to you. Are you that freaking hungry that you got to put mold in somebody's house so you can get your burnt offering? And you can make the argument that, well, they had to have this because people would just live with the mold and it would keep them from getting lung diseases and things of that nature. So it was a method to keep them from doing that. He was actually trying to protect them. Then why the sacrificing? Why is the sacrifice? Why can't they just move out their house, snatch up all the bricks and everything that has mold on it, then check and see if it's clean, if it's good to go. If it's good to go, then they're good to go. Why the sacrifice? Why the blood sacrifice? Why sprinkling blood all over the house? Why doing the magic? You see, if they wanted to say that their God didn't perform witchcraft or their religion doesn't have the witchcraft in it, then you take that magic out of it. You just go in and say, okay, you got mold. I see where the mold is at. We're going to take these stones, these bricks out all around here, take that out. Then we're going to put some new stones in. We're going to put the plaster up. All right, I'm going to come back in 7 days. If it ain't spread, then we good. All right, came back. We good. House is good. If it's still spreading, tear this house down. We're going to build y'all a new house, and y'all good to go. That's it. But the moment you start adding the sacrificing and you put the blood of the bird, of the live bird, dipped in the blood of the dead bird and shake them around the house, you do that 7 times, you just done magic. You cast a spell. You did a protection spell over the house. So they miss Cleo and everybody. And of course, sprinkling that blood don't mean shit. It doesn't do anything. If the conditions are right, the mold is going to come back. It's as simple as that. You make if the weather condition and the room conditions are right, the mold will return. My first time trying to understand and read the Bible was a horrifying experience. I'm trying to remember. The first time I read it from front to back, it wasn't horrifying because I was only 12. Some of it was like head turning, like what the. But I was only 12 the first time I read it straight. Before that, I was skipping around from 9 to 12. I skipped around. Looking for certain things. But at 12, I remember that the summer that I had turned 12. I remember that every day that morning I would get up and I would read the Bible till about from like 9 o'clock till 12 noon before I would go outside. I was skipping my Saturday morning cartoons. You know I'm lying. I ain't skipping Saturday morning cartoons. So every day except Saturday, I read this book. It wasn't horrifying. It became more and more horrifying. But it started being horrifying when I was about 16, 17. When I was rereading it again at that at that time frame, it became like, oh shit, what the hell is going on in this book? Because I had more understanding of what they was talking about. Right. Did I miss anything? Did anybody catch anything that I might have? I've never asked this question. I guess I should ask this question every time we do this. Was there anything in that reading that I missed that was messed up about this book? That wasn't right. Did I bring my eye drop medicine? I'm sorry, just had a secondary thought right there. Oh, for those who came here late, I'm wearing one contact because this eye is light sensitive and it hurts. And it's probably because of my prolonged wearing of contacts because I don't take them out hardly ever. So anything I missed, or is there any additional conversation that you guys want to have? Any other subject matters we want to talk about? It's almost 12. That doesn't mean we stop at 12. It just means that I have to unlock the front door to the lounge so that if anybody shows up, depending on who shows up, if somebody shows up, we have to stop. Other than that, we'll keep going until either 1:30 at the latest. So let's hear some subject matters, questions, thought processes. Did I miss anything? What's the Quran like? It is like reading. It is like the part 3. So the Quran is an Abrahamic book as well. It's Abraham is the father, progenitor. Some of the tribes that became the Muslims came from Ishmael. That was Abraham having sex with his wife, his slave wife, Hagar. And then his wife, after Sarah died, Keturah, she had some of the tribes that became the Muslims as well, primarily the Arabs. The Quran, I don't know a whole lot about the Quran. Some of the things I do know about the Quran is that it is much more strict on, it's much more like Judaism, where there are practices that you have to keep. The praying 5 times a day, facing east, which is interesting because prior to Mecca, they used to face towards Jerusalem, right? But your gateway into heaven is through your actions. They do allow for slavery, but you're supposed to make a way for your slave to gain their freedom. You're more honorable if you get a slave and then help the slave to get their freedom. And before Muhammad became a Muslim, he was a slave trader, and still in the early time frame had slaves. It took him a while to get out of that slave trade thing. If a person is not Muslim, then you can overtax them, and you can go as far as kill them if they're not Muslim. The Muslims have there is white supremacy in the Quran. There is Islamic supremacy. That anybody who is not Muslim is, a lower person. So, but quoting surahs and all that, I couldn't do it. I studied Islam back in 92, from 92 to about 93, and that was about it. I'm not Christian, but I've read most of the Bible. I have friends and family who has never read the Bible, will always argue with you about their God and how wonderful he is. My response is, you can't tell me nothing about this deity when you haven't never read that book. Julius, you are absolutely correct on that one. That is one of my first questions when somebody wants to debate me about this book. My family doesn't do that. Actually, interestingly, I cannot actually recall my family ever debating me about the Bible. Nope, they've never debated me about the Bible. This is going to sound arrogant. No, my family has known me since my birth. So they saw the kid who would sit in my grandmother's kitchen table, dining room table, and read the entire encyclopedia. There, I would go to the library and just read books all day. So I think they kind of just recognized that I didn't really start irritating my family by being a know-it-all until I was an adult. Back then, so they didn't really bother me. I never had that. It's other people though, outside of my family. Those people, they always tried. And I would ask them, have you ever read it? From front to back, studied it in depth, understand the cultural impacts, the social political environment to which it was written, when it was written, who wrote what, how much of it is historically accurate, how much of it is historically inaccurate. And if they couldn't really answer those, I kind of just left them alone. It wasn't until social media came that I would did some debates with people without qualifying the person first. Why American Muslims quote the Bible so much? Well, Muslims do believe that the Bible is a holy book of Allah. It's just wrong. Just some of the stuff is wrong. Jesus, for them, is a prophet of Muhammad. I'm prophet of Allah. He is a great teacher. So, like I said, it's like part 3 with a reboot. It's like the Marvel universe. You know how the Marvel universe, I'm a comic book nerd. When I watch Infinity War, it's close to the book, but it's not exactly the same. There's a lot of things that are different as far as the book is concerned when it came to Infinity War and Endgame, but it's close. but not exact same. Thanos is in it, but Thanos is different in the books. Adam Warlock was in it, but he's now different. You know what I'm saying? So that's how Muslims are, and that's why they'll still quote the Bible, because they're the MCU, quoting from, somewhat quoting things from the books, the actual comics. Since the Red Sea really was the Red Sea, but the Sea of Reeds, right? So my question is, could it be possible that the Nile Valley wasn't really the Nile Delta, rather the Snake Valley? Just asking. What's Snake Valley? Hold on, let me see. Did you say Snake Valley? Let me see what you said. Yep. Great Basin. Talking about Snake Valley, Utah? I mean Nevada. All I'm getting is Snake Valley is in America. Uh, KCAB, are you talking about Snake Valley in America? Then no, but it's the Sea of Reeds, and if you look at the Sea of Reeds, this is the up in the Nile Delta, and in that Nile Delta, there is a natural phenomenon that occurs when it doesn't happen every year, but sometimes this wind comes off the Mediterranean and it blows, and it's like the Sea of Reeds sits in about 6 feet of water. It blows all that water off, and then it becomes land, muddy, and then it possibly gets dry, but it becomes land, and it lasts for like a day or two. You can walk across it at that point, at that time frame. You can walk across. You don't need a boat. And then after that wind stops blowing, the water rushes back in. That only happens in the Nile Delta, in the Sea of Reeds. So when it's a mistranslation of the Red Sea. It is the Sea of Reeds, but it's talking about the Nile Delta. But it still don't last long enough, and those people to cross, for 2 million people to cross it in one night. But Snake Valley, when I was looking that up, that's up in like Nevada, Idaho, all that. Um, if you're indicating that, looking at the idea that when the Bible is talking about Egypt, they're really talking about America. Yeah, I got a video for that one later. It's not. It's not. I've done a video already where I traced the Nile River, the Mississippi River, from beginning to end, and at no point do four major rivers branch off at the same points from the Nile. I mean, from the Mississippi. And the Mississippi feeds the into the Gulf of Mexico. It feeds into the Gulf of Mexico. This river, the Euphrates, the Tigris, the Pison, Euphrates, Tigris, Pison, and one other river. Can't think of the river, but they flow from Turkey. Those rivers flow from Turkey, and then other rivers come into them and feed them, and then they would pour out into the Persian Gulf. But the people who are trying to claim that Egypt was really America is a combination of Hebrew Israelites, some of them, not all of them, but it's more of the Moors who are trying to claim that. And it's a sad thing to me because you're trying to manufacture a history so that you feel better about who you are. I literally don't need history to feel better about who I am. Like I don't. I don't need any history. I don't have to say that my people come from this great culture. We were once kings and queens. We used to dominate the world. We had science and technology and do this. That's great. That's great for those people at that time frame. Who I am has nothing. History is nice, but I learn from history and then I keep it moving. But who I am is based on what I think today. I can't live in the past. I can only live in right now. I can't live in the future. I can only live in right now. But the short answer, no. It's the Sea of Reeds. It's the Nile Delta. Oh, what did I just do? So Debbie says she never heard of Snake Valley. I Googled it real quick, and it's like Snake River Valley is up in like Idaho. Tell you what, next summer, when I take a motorcycle road trip to Spokane to see my son, I'm gonna go by the Snake River Valley. Actually, it looks very pretty. I see why they call it Snake River Valley. It's a very winding ass river, and it's sitting between mountains and stuff. That's going to be a beautiful mountain. That's going to be a beautiful ride. Take about 18, 20 days to do it. Not going to rush that one. And are these rivers really 4 or 7? Because someone was saying the rivers are 7, not 4. Well, if someone was saying that the rivers were 7, then they're going against what the Bible says. The Bible says that there were 4 rivers, right? And that's the Pison, the Gihon. I always forget the Gihon. The Pison, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. That is what their Bible says. So unless they're reading from some other Bible, it doesn't work. So, but like I said, people have this tendency to make up things. And here's a problem with that biblical story. That biblical story is saying that these rivers flow from one point. Those rivers, the ones that we know of today, they flow south. Now, up under the Persian Gulf, they do see that there are some ancient rivers up under there. Meaning that land could have one day, that land used to be dry land, used to be above sea level. Um, this would explain the 400-foot sea level rise and how the Persian Gulf was only formed about 9,000 years ago. But we know that this story is also inaccurate, as we had discussed in, I don't know if I discussed that in Genesis when we did Genesis 1. Those rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris, they flow south. They don't flow north. So how could they have emanated from the same point? They culminate in the same point, but they don't emanate from the same point. They end at the same point. And the thing about it, it would be biologically impossible for, even if the Persian Gulf was dry, for those rivers to flow out of the Persian Gulf when those rivers are fed from mountains up in Turkey. And especially the Euphrates. It fled from mountains and smaller rivers in Turkey, and therefore they flow south. They've always flown south. There's no indication that those rivers changed course. Oh yeah, Tennessee and Kentucky are really nice. The hills, it's a nice ride. If my motorcycle was fixed right now, there would have been some rides. I'm like, y'all ain't gonna be able to shoot this video on this day because we're gonna be riding. But no, so you when a person is taking the Bible and trying to make it fit into their narrative, and they say, "Oh, it's 4 rivers instead of 7," when you get into the nitty gritty of it, you show them how these rivers flow south, but they come together south. So how can the Garden of Eden, emanate from these rivers? And these rivers, well, how can these rivers flow out of the Garden of Eden if the only place they meet is south and they flow south? They would have to meet north and then flow south for the Garden of Eden to exist. So therefore, the Garden of Eden don't exist. Now, in the Sumerian version, Eden it wasn't a garden as much as like a garden where these rivers flowed out. It was a encampment. It was, a place. It was like a zoo. So the Homo sapiens of Adapa and Titi were placed in the enclosure of Eden in the city of Chaldea, in Eden, the city of Eden in Chaldea. And then they managed all the other Homo whatevers, Homo erectus, Homo Neanderthal, whatever other Homo sapiens that were created by the Anunnaki. So, as according to their story, they were in charge of them, but they was also kept like pets. When these people wrote this story of Genesis, they were in the southern kingdom of Judah. Rivers and water flows were very important to them. So they needed to write their stories to fit it. They may not have known that how the water is working coming out of the mountains of Turkey and flowing into these rivers. They may not have known where they meet and all those sorts of things because it's supposed to be hidden from them. They supposed to, this God doesn't want them to know where the Garden of Eden is, because if you can find the Garden of Eden, then you can find the tree of life. Should be sitting in the midst of the Garden of Eden. And then you can live forever, which is the fear of this God when he kicked Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. So you can't know it. Uh, if you think about the enclosure of Eden with the Sumerians, the tree of life was more representative of their scientific knowledge of how they extend life and how they create life. So therefore, their servants can't learn this. If they did, then they will be able to overthrow the Anunnaki. That's what Enlil was afraid of, according to their story. Think about it in the same way that they gave the Bible to slaves. Maybe one or two slaves could read. They told that slave which chapters they could read and which chapters they couldn't. But for I can't believe I can't remember his name. Which one did he did the most famous, the revolt that we know about? There were plenty of revolts, um, but the most famous one was the brother. They made a movie about him. Shit. But in his revolt, the thing about him is that he started, although he could only preach about certain parts of the Bible, he read all of it. So he read about the freedom and gaining your freedom and warriors and all this kind of stuff. He read about the genocides and them attacking and overcoming. So he was like, hell no. So you can't give them that. After the 1804, after the in 1804, after the Haitian Revolution, that's when the Slave Bible came out. It didn't really get published in the Americas too tough, up in the North America rather too tough. It was mainly in the Caribbean and South America. But that one just ripped out all those parts to make sure that the slaves who could read didn't read the parts that could tell a person that you ain't supposed to take all this bullshit. Read that part about turning the other cheek. Read that part about being good to your slave master. Read that part to the slaves. But don't read them any other part about warring and fighting and, about Perez going in and killing everybody in this town, him and his other brother killing everybody in this town because they raped his sister. Don't tell them that part. Because then you can say, well, wait a minute, Master raped my sister, so then I need to go kill them. Thank you, Nat Turner. Yep, Nat Turner. And Thanos from Avengers Infinity War was basically like the guy from the Bible where with the snap of his finger, half of the existence of all creatures ceased to exist. And and then he went to rest, he had to go rest in the garden. His work was done. Go rest in the garden. I used the stones to destroy the stones so that there won't be any temptations. But yeah, so you can't get don't when people come to you with these ideas and say there are seven rivers, then what is their proof? Where do they get this from? What proof do they get this from? And I'm always now in my life, I'm always looking for the swerve. What's the swerve? What's your reason for seven rivers? Is it merely just because you want to have that number seven? That number of completion? No, that's not a number of completion or whatever. Or was seven the number of completion or nine? One of them is a number of completion. But, seven is significant. So they want to have seven. Four is not as significant. 40 is significant, but four is not as significant. You know, you're three is significant, seven is significant, nine, 70, 40, those are significant. But four, yeah, it's a little lackluster there. Ooh, Julius said that I believe the Earth is a seeded planet that has been abandoned, and we are pretty much on our own, but we have to raise our consciousness so we can remember who we truly are and so that we don't reincarnate on this planet. That's just my belief. We are more in line, sir, than you think. The seeding of the planet is an interesting thought process. I like to refer to movies or books or something like that. There was an episode in Star Trek Generation. Actually, it was a couple of episodes of Star Trek Generation where there was this map, this genetic map was made, and all of them came together to be realized that they all were seeded, all the planets, the Klingons, the Vulcans, the humans, and the Romulans were all come from one planet who had searched the universe, was searching the galaxy, couldn't find anybody else in the galaxy. So they decided they were going to seed a bunch of planets, and they left a map, a code. And when they find this code, they all come together, and then the person is like, "Oh, this will look like the Dominion." It was like, "We were hoping that you would all discover each other and come in unity, and all this sort of thing." Appreciate that, Raquel. So they kind of demonstrated that seeding of the planet idea, and it's possible. It's possible. We see with the Sumerians, they talk about how the Anunnaki took the the common ancestor and the slice from the Homo erectus from the common ancestor and imprinted their genome scientifically in ours Today, scientists are saying that there seems to be some portions of our DNA that seems technologically infused into our systems, into our DNA. So it lends a little bit of credibility, not the end all be all, but a little bit of credibility to the Sumerian story. But then who made them? Were they from another planet or were they pre-Younger Dryas civilization? There's so many stories about pre-Younger Dryas civilizations. They could be pre-Younger Dryas. The whole Atlantean thought process is a pre-Younger Dryas civilization. So are we currently the genetic manipulation of a civilization that was already here on Earth, and then they decide to leave, or they're still here? Or did some people from somewhere else see this one? Was there life on Mars when Mars was more of a habitable planet? Or no, I'm going to reverse. Was there life on Venus when Venus was more in the habitable zone, when the sun was smaller? We're talking about like 6 billion years ago, when Venus would have been in the habitable zone from the sun. But as Venus starts to become less hospitable, did they knowing that the next habitable zone will be Earth, did they see the Earth and then leave? And are they the ones that keep coming back? Because if you think about it, would we do that same thing if we not gonna survive 3 billion years? But let's say we did survive 3 billion years. Would we then, seeing the Earth becoming less hospitable, but Mars hasn't quite got there yet, seed Mars so that life can be on Mars while we go somewhere else? There's supposed to be another habitable planet. I think the closest one is like 42 light years away or some shit like that. Off. So would we do the same thing? I would think we would. Since it took 9 months to be born, wouldn't be born? Oh, shit. Wouldn't make more sense to celebrate my birthday every 9 months rather than 12 months? Nah, it really wouldn't, because it is based on going around the sun one time. Like that's how we count a year. It's going around the sun one time. At least I wouldn't, because it wouldn't be the same day. And I would more likely say that how I forgot if it's 3 years or 7 years, every cell in your body has replicated. And then that's when you're truly reborn, when you have a new body. I don't know if it's 3 years or 7 years. You gotta check out the Foundation series since you like good galactic flicks. Foundation series. All right now. Oh, now don't let it be on Amazon because I got the Prime. You forgot because you pirate your movies and shows. Y'all, we're gonna report. Slaughter Terrence. We're gonna report his ass. He pirates. He just admitted it. We got him. We got him, y'all. We're gonna take him to court. Uh, I do like my galactic stuff. I even like the new Battlestar Galactica when that came out, the new version. But I ain't even checked TikTok. People on TikTok don't be saying nothing, so I hardly look up there. 7 years. Yeah. So yeah, since your body truly replicates itself every 7 years, that would be. I would ride that one. I'll rock that one first before I do 9 months. Oh yeah, we telling on Terrence. Yeah, buddy. We snitching. I can't talk. I got some app on this TV right here. I can get all the sports, which is very important for us cigar now. Technically, a business is supposed to pay an ungodly amount of money if you are showing sports in your establishment. Just like when you get in the elevator and they're playing that music, remember when if they're playing current day music, they're paying this company called BMI all kind of money just so they can play that music in their elevators. That's why you'll hear stores have this other music that they've commissioned. Well, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is that certain types of music makes you buy certain shit. Makes you feel more comfortable to buy stuff. But I don't think we'll ever go away from the 1 year trip around the sun. Have you seen? I have not seen the Prometheus film. I keep telling myself I'm going to watch that, and I have not seen Prometheus. Do you think there's some truth to the movie? The film was basically about finding out humanity's origins, and explorers found out that the engineers created them. I've heard people talk about it, so I understood that point of it. But for some reason, I never got around to watching it. But I tell you what, Marcus Bennett, after I finish this today, and then after I talk to Angelina, I'm going to watch Prometheus. That's going to be my movie today. I'm watching it. I've seen that scene over and over again where they're running from something falling on them and they run straight. Nobody thought to run to the left or run to the right. Oh, this ain't got nothing to do with anything that we talking about. But y'all, I just watched a 2-part movie. Me and Angelina watched a 2-part movie. When I'm talking about some crazy feats, if you watch RRR, the Indian movie, the Bollywood movie RRR, there is a Tollywood movie that's South India. It's called Bahubali. It's a part 1 and a part 2. So it's 2.5 hours on part 1, 2.5 hours on part 2. But it's called Bahubali. Some crazy shit happened. They like some superhuman stuff happened in that movie. But Prometheus is a really good movie. I'm gonna watch it, Julia. But y'all go. It was on Netflix. But Bahubali, Bahubali, Bahubali. It was good. We had jokers in here talking something. I ain't gonna watch this movie. Them jokers sat there and watched the first one, and I said, "Y'all want to continue?" We continue, but I ain't gonna really watch it. They sat here and watched the second one, and for those who did get up, like, damn it, now I'm gonna have to go home and I'm gonna have to finish this damn movie. Bahubali is good. It's a good. Amazing stuff, even to the small details, amazing stuff. But I'm gonna watch Prometheus. I'm gonna watch Prometheus. I want to see how the engineers, they seeded us and built us, right? I don't think it's impossible. I don't. It's possible. We don't know where we come from. To be honest, that's the real answer. That's the answer that anybody who is wise should give you. Is I have thoughts, I have theories. These ideas, these are possibilities, and these are not. But at the end of the day, we don't know. We simply don't know. And that is the hard part for people who are supposed to be intellectual, who are supposed to be deep thinkers. They have trouble. And of course, those who just want to be told, they really have problems because they want to know. Pretty much most people want to know. Where did humans come from? Where did we come from? Where did our ancestors come from? Did we naturally evolve? Well, if we naturally evolved, then where did the common ancestor come from? What things happened that caused for the common ancestor to split and you get your chimpanzee line, your gorilla line, and your monkey line? Where did that common ancestor come from? What created it? Did it come from a big ass ooze? Did it come out of the ocean? Okay. what facilitated all of that? Lightning striking the water that had the primordial ooze and life began? Or were we seeded? Did we come from another planet? At the end of the day, we don't know. And Alien Covenant, look, don't give me too many movies. I'll be sitting up here all day, won't get no work done. I love some movies. But we all want to know. I want to know. What is that? That looks pretty cool, though. And then if aliens came down and said, well, they seeded us, well, where did y'all come from? Who created y'all? What created? Who or what created y'all? Jews asked, what's my thought on junk DNA that they say that all black people have? I remember reading about that some years ago. I don't remember much about it. In genetics, the term junk DNA refers to regions of DNA that are non-coding. DNA contains instructions coding that are used to create proteins and tell however the amount of DNA cell that is vast, and not all of the genetic sequence presented in the DNA molecule actually code for protein. So then at 98% of our DNA, 98.5% of the DNA sequence is so-called junk DNA that scientists long thought useless. I don't know. It sounds like hold on. There's one article from University of Michigan where it's saying that this junk DNA is essential for life. Is vital function to ensure that chromosomes bundle correctly inside the cell's nucleus, which is necessary for a cell to survive. So it seems like this, what they're calling junk DNA, is actually necessary DNA. It's just non-coding that it doesn't produce as protein. And of course, they didn't know what it was used, what that DNA is used for. But it seems like it's controlling gene activity. Uh, that without it, we wouldn't survive. We'd die. Hmm. Well, it seems like that's what junk DNA would do. That from the quick little research right there, that a quick little look, and I looked at about 6 different sources right then. That this what they call junk DNA is now is a controversial topic concerning the fact that it seems that it may not, although it doesn't produce its proteins, it's vital for the cohesion of the cell. So if the cells can't continue to be consolidated like that, then it's not going to, your cells would die. So that would make it not junk. Now, in that quick read, I didn't see anything about black people having more of it. No. most things in our body are essential to life for us to exist, for us to be who we are. I have to do more research on that one to have a fuller understanding of it. Yep. Who created them? Is consulting from the ancestors really necessary, or that's another stupid thing one can do? A little bit of yes, a little bit of no. Whole lot of it depends on your spiritual path. Genetically, every ancestor that you have had is encoded into who you are, right? And 25% of who we are is genetic. 75% is the environment that you grow up in, everything that you experience, what you learn. Because consciousness never dies, consciousness is always just transmuting from one to another to another to another. Within that consciousness, you will have the memories and skills of anybody. Accessing those skills and that consciousness, I do think there's a process to which we can do so. I don't think most people have the capabilities or have learned how to. I don't think casting palm nuts and being going through possession cycles or any of those things is how you get there. I think your ability to, you have to develop an ability to gain deeper mental focus, control your emotions, and then nurture your instinctive nature to be able to connect to the genetics that your ancestors have given you. And you're only going to connect to genetically that 25% of you that is genetic. Everything else is historically learned, or you can pull from the ether. And pulling from the ether would be contacting your ancestors' consciousness. I'm going to say 99.99999% of the people will never be able to do that. They think they can. They say they can. They feel it because it's an emotional thing. Because people, if you think about it, most people, oh, I talk to my grandmother, I talk to my grandfather. It's usually people they know. It's usually people they know. And when they say, oh, the ancestors are telling me that I need to go buy this car, I need to take this job, or I need to do this, I need to do that, really they're talking about what they feel. They convince themselves of what they feel is the right thing to do. They've sat in meditation or did some ritual, and they just emotionally are attracted to doing this or that. And they really can't separate between their emotions and their instincts, but they're going based on emotions. Because of their ancestors was so all-knowing, living both in past, present, and future, then their shit wouldn't be wrong sometimes. Most of the time. They wouldn't be making the wrong decisions in life. So no, I don't is it a possibility? Yes. Are people doing it? Hell no. Most people, no, they're not doing it. They're not accessing it. I forgot the Indian dude who brought up and start teaching about the Akashic record, which is you being able to connect to your ancestors. Who called it the Akashic record? But most people ain't doing it. I've had what, my grandfather once, and I completely read it wrong. It wasn't until about 13 years, 12 years later that I actually understood what that encounter meant. But beyond that, when I tried to access, nah. It is hard to overcome your emotions and what you desire in order to literally hear from the ancestral plane. Hell, even T'Challa had to drink some special potion to do it. It's like when an animal is born, it has the instinctive traits within a few hours of their birth when born healthy. Natural selection. When we are developing, we learn. We have a natural ability to do certain things. I think those skills and abilities might be characteristics of our ancestors. How do you feel about that ideology? I agree with that. Then that's 25% of who you are. One of the first ways that I started realizing that is I didn't grow up with my father in my life. Like I knew him. I knew of him. I knew of him. We talked every now and then in a blue moon. Like we could go a couple of years without me hearing talking to him. When I went and visited him in Florida, maybe what 2 times out of my life when I was growing up. He would come up to Atlanta maybe once every couple of years, where every other year, and then when he did come, he spent more time with my mom and his longtime friends. So I didn't really know him. He didn't have that impact on my life, right? But when I moved to Florida and I was 27 years old, and I'm living with him at first when I first got to Tampa, and stayed with him until it took me like 60 days to buy a house. So I'm living with him, and he's telling me all these stories. He's telling me some of the stories are the other perspective of stories that my mom had taught me, or my aunts had told me. And he's telling these stories. He's telling me about himself, and he's telling me all these things that he did, how he was as a young man when he was my age, and all this kind of thing. And I'll be damned if me and that man didn't share a lot of personality traits. But I didn't grow up with him. So, of course, I had to delve in and figure out how could I have similar personality traits to somebody that I did not grow up with. Part of that genetics. That's actually the first time I really started studying genetics. I was like 27 years old at that time frame, like 25, 27. And I started studying genetic traits at that time frame. So I was like, this was, this bothered my mind. This was really bothering my mind. Like, I didn't grow up with this man, but I act a lot like him. So, how was that possible? Other than certain genetic traits are embedded in us from our parents and grandparents and so on and so forth. Because even though I grew up with my grandfather, there's a lot of things he did that I had no idea he was doing. But then later on, I find out, shit, I'm doing things like my grandfather. And that's my grandfather on my mother's side. My grandparents on my father's side, they had already passed on before I was born. So I didn't know them. But I found out that that my personality had their personality traits I have that are similar to them from the people who knew them. So there has to be some type of passing on of instinctive personality traits from these people. So you have to wonder what other ancestors that even those who are around can never tell you a story about that you are acting just like them. And when I look at my kids, they've grown up with me in their lives constantly. But from after 2008, we weren't in the house together, even though they was. We did a lot. We did weeks at a time, weekends, weeks. We alternate weeks during the summer, alternate holidays, alternate school breaks, weekends. I call them jokers all the time when they was growing up. They only lived an hour away from me, and they're still in Metro Atlanta. But I can look at them jokers and I was like, I see who y'all act like. But then I can also look at them and see, damn, y'all act like my dad, or you're acting like my mom, or you're acting like, my grandmother. Like my daughter Sydney acts a lot like my grandmother on my mother's side. She has a lot of those traits. It's just Debbie says she's just like her mom. Yeah. And like Simone, my daughter Simone, she is definitely her father's child. Marcus, I do not know exactly, but maybe the human being, ancient common ancestor, serpent-like being, or ancestral ancient astronaut uh, from the Younger Dryas civilization came from a different atmosphere or dimension, and that's possible. They could have. I really want them to do more study on Mars, but because Mars, we've already know that Mars had rivers, it had water, it had oceans, it had an atmosphere. Is it possible that those prior to the Younger Dryas were on Mars, and then when they saw the Mars atmosphere was about to collapse, they scurried their little asses on the Earth, or they saw that, or they were on both planets. It's possible they could have been on both planets, and then they left Mars and came to Earth. Uh, I think we have a better chance of figuring out the pre-Younger Dryas civilizations and where they came from and that sort of thing than figuring out Mars or another dimensional plane. I know there's a thought process out there to say that the Martians came to Lemuria, tried to create a false Merkaba, uh, a synthetic Merkaba in Lemuria, and when they did that, the fifth dimensional consciousness of everybody who was on the planet at that time went away, and we all became this third, fourth dimensional beings that we are today. And the goal is to regain your Merkaba or raise your consciousness, your Kundalini energy, to get back to that state of being. But it's a little too pie in the skyish because they try to make it seem like when you're at that dimensional plane, everybody was so good and so nice to each other and fair and all that. I'm sorry. Greed, greed and greed and sharing are on the same pole, same emotional pole, and you can't get rid of it. It will always be there. No matter how highly evolved we become, there will always be a lower vibration to every pole. Is prophecy real or not? Can someone really tell your future? Hell yeah, I can tell your future. If I calculate the way that things have happened in the past, and according to what things are happening today, I can predict your future. Nah, man. These prophecies, most of them are fake. What's up, Donald? We was talking about that yesterday. K-Cab should have been here yesterday. Uh, the fact that I could make a prediction of how the what's going to happen over the next 30 years. Like I can predict that World War III will happen within the next 20 years. And that war will be fought in East Africa and the Middle East. Now, how will I be able to make those predictions? As African nations are becoming freer and freer, the pressure is coming from China and Russia versus America, and who's going to control these regions that will have the majority of resources on the planet in the next 25 years, who will have access to them. Tensions will rise high. Man is greedy. We have always fought wars over resources. But with three major powers like that going at one area, World War III, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. You can predict it. What did you say? I've known three times. I've had three times where I saw things that made no sense on why I should have known them. Now I do get that one a lot. I do get that one a lot. Where there was just things that didn't make no sense, and I should have. I knew them. Say we think we came from Mars, more microbial. and not manlike. And that's possible. Said that'll be written in Coach Renz. What'd you say, Coach Renz? 11910. I'm telling you. Oh hell, Skybox is back. I'm telling you, Skybox, we can roll with that one, boy. I write that book. I become the messenger of the all. What's going on in Niger is a great thing. What's going on in Niger right now? The next war will be because of the control of the coronavirus. You know, if they keep on fucking around with this coronavirus, you're going to see some civil unrest. You can't. Angelina was showing me this thing yesterday where um, they are predicting that this year, towards the starting next month, they'll start trying to put us back under lockdown. It's too soon. You can't do those things repeatedly behind each other, The people will start to distrust the government and all that sort of thing, and people will start fighting. What's going on in Niger? Usually I'm pretty up to date on my African news. Granted, I haven't watched much African news in the last 2 weeks. I've been doing a whole bunch of things, deciding whether or not I'm going to keep this cigar lounge open or not over the last 2 weeks. So, what's going on in Niger? Update me real quick. I had a dream that were crystal clear, unless it was involving people I didn't know, and their faces were blurred. But every other facet of the dream was damn near perfectly accurate. Oh, so you're like me, Mr. Anthony. Um, I have very vivid dreams damn near every night. Um, if I don't catch myself in the first thing in the morning, like, and wake up and read it, wake up and when I first wake up, if I don't sit there and contemplate that dream, I'll forget the dream. But most of the time, I get a chance to contemplate that. Most of the time, I get a chance to contemplate the dream so that I can remember it. Like, somebody abruptly woke me up this morning and I didn't get a chance to contemplate the dream, so I don't even remember what I dreamed about last night. But most of the time, when I have a dream, oftentimes those dreams become reality. So Niger is looking for independence from France and America, backed by Russia. I thought Niger was already independent. There's still colonies in Africa. I thought all the African countries were independent. Ooh, that writing's small. I thought Niger was already independent. Oh, Niger is where they're having a coup. They got two different military generals who are fighting one another right now. I did see something about that. I haven't dug deep into that one yet to see what the hell's going on. I just saw that like the other day, like Sunday, where there's a coup that's going on. So the coup. So what you're saying is that the coup that they're having in Niger is to overthrow the current government that's pretty much a puppet of the American and French governments. I tell you, these Western countries are fighting over who's going to be Africa's partner. And the problem that they're having is that Europe and America wants to puppet them, whereas China and Russia are saying, "Hey, we just want to be in partnership and make money off y'all." And they don't like that. America is not going to like that. Do I think America will have a coup soon? Nah. America's not going to have a coup. America is not right now. Fortunately, unfortunately, I think America has at least another 100 years on it. Because that'll be right about the time frame. See, this is how those prophecies and bullshit can go. If you look at civilizations, Rome was different. Rome was very different. Rome lasted for like 1,000 years. It is very hard for a civilization, a government to stand for 1,000 years. Usually somewhere between that 350 to 600, shit gets so bad that that's when a country changes. America, America's pushes people, but they've been pretty decent at only pushing you so far, and then kind of like give you a falsified freedom or relief. You haven't gotten arrogant enough yet. Haven't gotten the divide between the rich and the poor is big, but it ain't big enough because there's enough comparison to other countries. Like Americans don't know what poverty is. I take you to some countries where I can show you some damn poverty. The poorest person in America is rich compared to the majority of poverty around the world. I haven't quite got there yet. Um, and America is very good at pacifying the groups that could start some shit. Black people was ready to start some stuff. They pacified the hell out of us. Screwed ourselves. The Russians erased billions of dollars in debt owed by Niger, and Russia brought Russian military to help defend their country. Yeah, I'm telling you, World War III within the next 20 years will most likely start somewhere in East Africa. It's highly unlikely it'll start in West Africa, but East Africa will be primed for it. And the Saudis are going to have to figure out something because in the next 50 years, they're going to run out of oil. And they have fallen in love with that money and they will not go back to the way that they were looking prior to the 70s. They're not going to go back to that. They have gotten that power, that taste of that power. They want to keep that power. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Saudis try to start some shit with East Africa, and that brings in a whole another level of fighting. So there's a couple of different ways it can happen. But I can make a vague prediction, a vague prophecy of that. That in the coming generations, that's how you say it. In the coming generation, 40 years, a great war will begin in the center point of the world, in the desert lands. You build millions, 100 million will die. Those coming from the north and those of the west converging. It happened. But two other countries aligned with Niger. But America having a civil war of sorts, we'll break off into a 3-party, 4-party system before that happens. If people follow my directive of, I'm gonna tell you how we can start a war. We can break up America. Is it based on our past history that wars are created, or is it greed? It's greed. Wars are fought over greed, the greed of resources. Let me tell you how we can stick this. Let me tell you how we can fuck up America. I'm going to say it once again. I'm going to keep on saying it. If 76% of the black people in America move to the Southeast and we take over all the governments and all the jobs and industry in the Southeast, you know the Latinos going to join up with us because they're going to be like, oh, shit. They're going to join up with us. So you're looking at all the blacks and Latinos existing in this, well, not all, but 76% of blacks and Latinos living in the Southeast. Understanding that 80% of America's population lives on the east of the Mississippi River, right? We are all in the Southeast. At some point, all of us being in this area, we will, our appointed government officials are going to get tired of the federal government not giving us a fair shake. It will be the same as the Civil War, just over different, but it's still over money. When enough of that is happening, those governments in the Southeast will say, we want to legally separate from y'all and govern ourselves. How do y'all bullshit? Either it would be given peacefully or it'll start a second civil war. And let's say it takes 20 years for that to happen. There will be enough African nations that will be strong enough to support. We would get support from China and Russia and certain South American countries. That would change America. And I honestly think if we did that, America would capitulate because you will see a rise of Republicans against Democrats. And those Midwestern states and a lot of those Western states will say, yeah, shit, they separate. We want to separate too. It's a beautiful thing. We could fuck up America. So Niger's cutting off the European gas line that is planned to run to Europe. So that's why France and them upset. But yeah, we could change the game, y'all. We could change the game. Yeah, it'd be a crazy. Which war would be a crazy war? My American crazy war? It'd be a good war, though. A good war. You know how many of us have served in the military, understanding the military? You know how many military bases are in the Southeast? The only thing that we're going to be hurting on is the Navy and fucking Navy, pilots, and what's the other thing I'm thinking about? Submarines. That's right. And this house is very much divided. It's consistently becoming more and more divided. Coronavirus vaccine, from what I'm feeling, was the rollout of a measure. It keeps popping up. Measure to dramatically reduce the global population. There have been corona claiming some corpses are now showing protein straps that are nobody. Oh shit, you're a lot, man. They keep on flipping, so I can't read this goddamn thing. Oh yeah. Now I was telling people that whole corona thing was part of population reduction. It's too many of y'all. Too many of y'all on this planet. Do you know how many blacks are brainwashed they would never turn on masks? Yes, they will. Let me tell you why they will. And you have to understand we don't need everybody. We don't need everybody. Never have needed everybody, never will need everybody. In order to start a movement, think about it. The Nazi Party took over Germany and they weren't even the majority of the people. Yeah, since 2019, a lot of black people have been moving to the Southeast. Let me break it down to you. This thing called the law of innovation of diffusion. This is also how movement starts. All you have to do, and it sounds easy, but it's not. Right now in the Southeast, 34% of Black people already live in the Southeast, right? So we're already here. And as we continue, we keep taking over government positions and taking over jobs and industries as we're already here. Now we start making more of a concerted effort. We're doing it slowly right now, but if we make more of a concerted effort to do so, and we start hiring people from the north and from the Midwest and the West to come to, the Southeast, and we taking over and we buying farmland, we building cities and taking over cities first and then building more cities. As it becomes the thing to do, those who are still attached to massa are going to say, well, I'm attached to massa, but this is the thing to do. Look at Atlanta. In the 80s, Atlanta was a chocolate city, but it was a chocolate city mostly from people from the Southeast. It was our own. We were just interchanging. They leaving Birmingham, coming out of Carrollton, out of the North Georgia mountains, and coming into the city. All of a sudden, Freaknik happened. Let me tell you, it's crazy. Freaknik first got a whole bunch of college kids who said, well, shit, I'm staying down here. And they start coming down here and they start going to college here. And then they get here and they get jobs and they wind up staying and develop their families. Then the Olympics happened in Atlanta. And people came down, they saw how great it was, and they started rolling in here again. Then COVID hit. And COVID, we had a mass migration of Black people who moved down to Atlanta. Because, the warmer weather, the better spread out you can be, the cheaper housing, all those sorts of things. So now we just need a concerted effort to purposely attract Black people to the Southeast. As it becomes more and more of the thing to do, more and more Black people start moving down here. As they move down here, we start taking over government positions and those things like we have, but we start taking over rural government positions as well, so we can control the entire state. Then it becomes, oh shit, Black folks now took over Georgia. People will just move. They won't be thinking about breaking away from massa or breaking away from America. It's just going to be the safer place, the more upward movement that you can have. That's all they think about. Safer schools, better schools. That's all they'll start. They ain't thinking about separating. It won't be until, and then when you do that, we will get to about 50% of the Black people. When 50% or more of the Black people are living in the Southeast, we are controlling some states at this point. At least one. That's when they'll try to start changing the paradigm, start making it harder for people in the Southeast. And then that's when we get pissed because they'll be messing with our money. And when they mess with the money, that's when people get radicalized and start walking away. Now, mic on. All right, YouTube, you should be back now. During the civil rights movement, that first 1%, 5%, most black people were like, hell no, we ain't getting involved in this. But as more and more people, once they went over 15 to 18%, once they tipped the scale at that level, that's when more people came in a rush. It was slow, it was small grassroots, and then once they went over 18%, it was like boom, this huge 30%, 34% of people start joining it. Now, as that 34% start joining, then here comes this next 34% because it's safer now. It's part of what we're doing. We've seen people march, we've seen them they've been harassed, but we see them come back. We've seen them go to jail, but we see them get out. Yeah, it's a lot, but more and more people start feeling safe, and then the entertainers and all them got involved in, and and they felt more safe. Like it was a safer thing to do. You're not alienated in your community. You had communities here in Atlanta where, um, if you were the ones that was on Dr. King or Stokely Carmichael's or any of their sides, then you were ostracized from your neighborhood. But then a few years later, when it had became a movement, those neighbors who ostracized you are now trying to join in. But it's the sheep mentality of people. All you got, they'll do it. Just that's the sheep mentality of people moving to the southeast right now. I've met people who moved down here and they're like, shit, man, I heard this place with black folks. I see all these black people with BMWs and these nice houses. Shit, I came to Atlanta to get my BMW, get my nice house. I'll politicize them. Like I'll radicalize them later. I just need to get them here. Blacks in the military is a bad look. No, even though I was in the Marine Corps, so a little bit of bias, but not a whole lot of bias. But if you're going to ever be a country that separates, you need to have those who have fought in the military, who have been trained in the military. So I don't scoff at any black person who goes to the military. Yeah, you're getting sent to fight shit that you shouldn't be involved in right now. But if we are truly to separate from them 30, 40, 50 years from now, we need those people who have been trained in the military, trained in espionage, trained in every aspect of every function of society. I can't grab some joker off the street who just grew up and he was working at damn CVS and expect that joker to know how to fight. He can't lead me militarily. Can't lead me in a fight. I need somebody who understands command and control, supply lines, the process of information. I need that. Yeah. So you got to have those military people. That's why I encourage more black kids. Hey, man, go. You need to learn how to be a pilot. You in the Navy, you need to become a ship captain. Good dude that I knew, he passed away, but he was in command of the Pacific submarine fleet. Black guy, we need more of those. That when shit hit the fan, we're not sitting up here walking around with just whatever armament we purchased at Walmart and the gun shop. Better get access to them Mark 19s and all, and some A1 Abram tanks and some of them, F-18 Hornets, some of them Apache helicopters. You gotta have access to those things, or it's gonna be a hard way to go in the beginning. It's gonna be a hard way to go. My son is in the Air Force right now, learning how to fix them jet engines. Somebody got to keep them jets flying. We need more pilots, though. We need more pilots. Air superiority is a very important thing. But one day you got to put boots on the ground. The Afghans have shown you're going to have to put boots on the ground. And guerrilla warfare is a some bitch. some of that air combat will be taken care of by Russia, China. Yeah, gotta know how to shut down their weapons. Can't let them have all the weapons. I remember we ran race war scenarios back in '95 in the Marine Corps. Well, it wasn't just the Marine Corps; it was a joint thing. And I got a chance to read the reports. It didn't come up all roses for the Caucasians. They lost. They predicted the loss of quite a few key military bases. Quite a few. And I remember my colonel asked me about that. He asked me what would I do. I said, "Sir, you're a great guy. I enjoy you. We have a great relationship. But I have to kill you. If you side with them, I'm gonna have to kill you. There's absolutely no way I'm gonna go and black people are revolting against America, and I'm gonna sit up here and fight with you, fight and go kill, shoot my aunties, my uncles, my cousins. It's not gonna happen." And he understood because he was like, "I would hate for it to happen, but you know, I'll be." He was like, "I'll be forced to be on one side." And I told him, "Well, you wouldn't be forced. That'd be you would have to choose. I'm forced. You choosing." And the Spanish guys were like, "Nope, gonna have to rock with the black people." And Glock versus tank won't go well. Sure hell wouldn't. And y'all, I don't know if y'all ever seen an M1 Abram. That thing can roll at 60 miles per hour. It ain't slow. It is not slow at all. The biggest issue it'll have is some. The greatest thing about the Southeast and the biggest issue it'll have is we have so much tree coverage. If we was all out west, we get our ass whooped. The land is too flat, too sparse, not enough trees. Them Abrams gonna need the roadways. And there's some booby traps and there's some shit. I can go to Walmart and get some stuff out of Walmart. We can you can mess up some stuff with just the things you can get out of Walmart. So yeah, he would have to do the same as I would. The people who are really caught in the middle, black dude married to a white woman, white dude married to a black woman, and especially if they got kids. Neither side is really going to trust them fully. So they kind of screwed over. What do you think history will define African American history? You have to explain that more. What do you mean by that? Like, if that such a thing happened? But history is always defined by whoever wins. By whoever wins. Now, you can get more narratives out now because we're more of a connected world through technology, but most history is defined by the victor. You have to regrow food forests as well as more coverage. Well, that's the beauty of the Southeast. There's already a lot of coverage. We were driving to Savannah, and the whole ride down to Savannah, sometimes just staring, and Angelina was like, "What's on your mind?" And I was like, "Well, I was just looking at this land right here in this terrain and how we would be able to roll down this terrain, and if we were being attacked by a helicopter squadron, what our coverage would be, and how we would take this town and this county. The population in this county is half white, half black. How we would have to send troops in to go and support those black people and then hold that town as we make our way down to Savannah." I fought like a whole goddamn war going from Atlanta to Savannah, and what would be the avenues of taking all of that, because controlling Georgia, it'll be very important to. We'll get Atlanta real quick and easy. We'll control Atlanta real quick and easy. We'll control the suburbs around Atlanta as well. But we would have to get down to Savannah and take Savannah. We have to take Columbus, Georgia, and we have to take Augusta, Georgia. Those are primary key points that we have to take in this city, and then control down by that Austin tip, down on the southern border, down off 75. The Okefenokee Swamp, you don't have to worry about that too much because their vehicles and stuff won't be able to patrol through there. But that southwest portion of Georgia, we have to control that, and we can control that through Columbia. There's military bases in each one of those places, vital military bases. Submarine base down in, we would lose the submarine base though in Georgia. They've just pulled all the submarines out if we can't control those real quickly. But the number of black people on those military bases down there, they will be fighting a hard ass battle to control those bases. To which you control those bases, then you can control those cities. So the city of Atlanta would definitely have to go down there and support them while defending our north from the North Georgia people. But I was running that whole scenario as we drove through Atlanta, drove down to Savannah. And controlling Savannah and Augusta is important because the Savannah River. We need to control the Savannah River. We control Georgia down to Savannah, and then stalemate. And if we can't get Chattanooga, we need to try to get Chattanooga so that we can control Chattanooga and some parts of Alabama, so we can control the Chattahoochee River. Water supply will be very important. So yeah, I was fighting the whole damn war. Like Moses, when leaving Egypt, we all fall eventually, and history as we know could be lost. Yeah, history could be lost. I live in the now. I think the whites will side with their kind, even if they're, yeah. No, I think most white people are going to side with other white people. No. It's going to break up some families. What are your thoughts on the predictive programming through film, music, television, and other forms of entertainment? You mean like how they try to control our actions and thoughts based on all those things? I mean, they do. They utilize media to control us. I'm gonna make a movie. I'm gonna show you some stuff, make it seem fantastical, but that shit real. Same thing in television. I'm gonna try to also change the narrative. I mean, let me tell y'all that black men aren't in the families. They're not dealing with their children. When that's a bold-faced ass lie. We do so more than white people than any other group. Black marriages are on the rise, but black cohabitation is higher than they give credit for. We have the southern part of Alabama easily controlled, but Birmingham would be a holdup, and once claimed, the rest would go easily. Yeah. Oh yeah. I figured that part out too. From the lower Alabama, LA, we got LA. We got LA. That's why we have to communicate very quickly and join up with the people out of Montgomery and Mobile and control that because we need seaports. Um, and then to take the rest of Alabama, Birmingham would be fiercely fought over. It's not mountainous, but it's hilly. It's a lot of hills, so it'll be a hard fight. Mountain fighting is not easy, but with the help from Atlanta, we can take Birmingham and take Huntsville, and then take the rest of Alabama. Yep, Moses is a made-up story. It'd be the story of Renz. No, we don't know the true number of black people in America. Um, we are far and away from the majority, though. They did a good number of massacring and sterilizing and making sure we have a shorter lifespan. But we would write our own history because we would take over. We ain't gonna all out lose. I can tell you that. We ain't gonna all out lose. Could we get the whole entirety of the Southeast from like Houston over to North Carolina? It'd be hard to hold all of that. But we can get Georgia, Mississippi, and Alabama, and maybe South Carolina. We can get all that. We can get all of that. That's achievable. And just to achieve that, let's say that the numbers are right, and there's 47 million black people in America, and 76% of those people come into the Southeast. We can take Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and probably South Carolina. We can take that. I would definitely want South Carolina because we need an Atlantic coastline. South Carolina and Georgia, we need an Atlantic coastline because you don't want to get bottlenecked in the Gulf of Mexico. You need an outlet to the Atlantic Ocean. So we're gonna need our friends from Africa and Brazil and Africa and South America. Some South American countries just ain't gonna be on America's side just because they don't like America. They ain't gonna be on the white folks' side because they don't like America. You're creating a whole Bible off the war I'm writing. Black people with superpowers. Oh, cool. I like that kind of stuff. The problem would be Tuscaloosa to the west and Gaston to the east. It would maybe possibly. Really, so I used to think rural Georgia was going to be difficult, but when I looked at the population in rural Georgia, and I would imagine rural Alabama is very similar because I did look at populations in rural Mississippi as well. There's really a good number of black people who live in those rural towns. They're just not the wealthiest people, but let's be real. Wealthy people can't fight, and they don't fight. Wealthy people are going to want to send the poor white people into fight. They not trying to fight themselves. So we not fighting them. We literally will have more soldiers than they would have. If you think about it, we will have more soldiers than they have. Even like here in Atlanta, I'm in Gwinnett County. These white people in Gwinnett County don't know anything about rough life. They not. They gonna be. They running. They trying to get the hell on. You'll have some Caucasians in Tuscaloosa who will sit up there and they'll be like, because Gaston got a lot of black people compared to that. When you look at their population, they have a good percentage of black people. Now that I think about it, I do know a little bit about Gaston. Used to hang out in Jack State a lot, but them Caucasians gonna be like, nah, let me get some of these good old boys and let them try to defend us, and they will fall for it. But they're gonna lose out on those who could fight because some of those suburban higher earners, they ain't fighting. Let me tell you something. Learning how to hunt and learning how to fight in a war are two very different things. Incredibly different things. Right, the suburbs in those areas. But we'll take those. We're gonna have to take those anyway for resources. Take all the food and everything. But hunting, understand these boys go hunting. They sitting in a pillbox and they wait for the animal. They throw some little stuff out there and they waiting for the animal. They might walk through some woods a little bit, but they don't understand. They don't know how to fight a war. That's totally different. Oh, if we fighting a war, you want to get to Georgia? It's gonna be some Tennessee and Kentucky ain't gonna be an easy win. It ain't gonna be like it's just all white instantly. There's gonna be some shit going down. But these people fighting. That's why all these military veterans are going to be key in gaining military position over these factions. And you think about some of that, if the lead up to all of that stuff, just like when they was the cops was shooting all the black people and it was being recorded. I mean, they've been doing it, but when it was getting out and it was big and all that stuff, black people went and bought guns as the highest. We were the highest group. We were the largest group to go out and buy guns. So it ain't like they walking around with all the guns. We got them. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Anthony. That ability and that willingness to kill, it is more. They've had more of a practice, natural ability to do it, but it's not most of them. Most of these white folks around here, these Caucasians, they ain't never really been in a situation where their life was in danger and they had to pull something. Yeah, they don't know how to do all that. They're just as it comes down to survival. It comes down to survival. Let me give you an instance. Can't name the place. Can't name the place. But there was a situation where there was a small contingent sent down into a place, and then some people came in there and they started shooting. Then those people, that contingent couldn't fire yet because of Geneva Conventions and all that kind of bullshit. But then a bullet came into the building. The white guy who was supposed to be in control, and he was one of them hunting hillbilly motherfuckers, because the people who were shooting at them were children, he couldn't pull the trigger. But the black guy who was there said, fuck that bullshit, and took over. And when he took over, they took care of the situation because it was about survival. I'm not about to die. The white dude froze up. Oh, he got talk all kind of shit about going hunting. But when it came down to it, no, he froze. Froze. I hear you, Anthony, talking about most black people be waiting for God to save them. No, sir. No, sir. Yeah, it'd be a whole lot of praying and all that. But when shit hit the fan, you'd be surprised at what people do. I've seen some very pacifistic people that when shit hit the fan, motherfuckers start pulling the trigger. No, those children were black, and he would not fire on those children because they were children, and he had kids, but he was not going to fire on those children. And the other person was like, I don't give a damn who they are. I'm not dying. Not dying at all. And you're right, Guinea. There are more and more people walking away from this religion every day. And right, most of them got that confidence when the opposition is the prey. Yeah. It's easy to shoot an animal that you don't and you feel safe the whole time. Yep. That dude was like, fuck them kids. Them kids pull the trigger. Let me show you what happens when I pull my trigger. But see, when they hunting deer, boar, birds, even those ones that I'm a big game hunter, I shot this lion, I shot this bear. Mm-mm. It was this white dude I was in the Marine Corps with. This crazy bastard. Now he's the exception of the white guys that I've ever met. That joker went bear hunting with just knives. That's an exception. That's an exception. But most of these guys will freeze up. The military trained ones, they won't. But let me tell you, when you behind a wall and bullets are flying, your ass gonna pull that trigger. Because as much as people are like, oh, Jesus saved me. All that shit go out the window. Then they like, Jesus forgive me. Jesus forgive me. It turns into that. Say we got to recruit him. Oh, that would be so interesting. I wonder what he's doing right. I'm sure he's out of the Marine Corps right now. But Wilson would be an interesting dude. He loved him some black women. He grew up in a small country ass town in North Carolina. I used to go out to his house quite often. Before, especially in between Desert Storm and Bosnia, and him going to the Marine Corps was his introduction to black women, and that boy just fell head over heels with black women. I wouldn't be surprised if he's married to a black woman. I know he went home first, and where he was living, it's like black people stayed on their side, white people stayed on their side, and they used to look at me and him funny when we would go into places. But that damn Wilson, black women and Spanish women, he started loving them. I would imagine he probably married a Spanish woman. I bet I can find him. But yeah, Wilson crazy as hell. And then you got some of these white guys who are like the one, like this guy I was with, Queen. Queen and his family own them. Their land encompasses a mountain in West Virginia. He's the kind of guy that Queen gonna be like, he got that West Virginia pride thing going. I ain't going to fight nobody. I'm staying here and protecting my land. That's Wilson. Keep making my moon shine. That's all Queen. That's Queen's mentality. He ain't fighting nobody. He's gonna fight anybody trying to take his land in West Virginia. You say our black women could be our Achilles heel? Explain. You did that in Africa. Shit. In Africa back in '94, I was there building schools and other infrastructure facilities. We killed 137 people who had been and buried them under the school to strengthen the foundation. That section of the school should have had a cracked foundation by now. In '94, where in Africa in '94? I'm curious. They had teens and preteens in that group. Yep. Oh, they heavily recruited teenagers. Look. I know it might be hard to grasp. Sierra Leone. Huh. All I can say is, huh. Huh. That's all I can say to that one is, huh. I want to keep people from coming through my door. Huh. I think you're giving too much power. You're giving way too much power of this religion when it comes to warfare. Religion takes a huge backseat when it comes to actual warfare. Right? And you will see a different dynamic of the black male, black female when it comes to warfare. When, especially when it's so race based. I've seen it in countries that are Christian African countries. I saw it in Bosnia with the Muslims and the Christians. And when it came down to fighting, look at them white women in Ukraine. When it came down to fighting, they know that those white men is not going to take care of them at that point because it's a black and white fight. They're also going to recognize who they have better protection from, because I think they're going to see a side of black men that they haven't seen. They not think they will see a side of black men that they don't normally see if it's in warfare. And they going some of them will fight. Some of them will fight. A lot of them will be in support positions, meaning running supply lines, running information, um, running health, and all the health and welfare stuff. They will get in there. They will support, because you're not going to have a choice. See, you can't think about it how things are today. And I understand if you haven't been in combat or been in a combat area, it's hard to imagine. But people's people different. They change. Cleopatra wasn't so much an issue as to their demise. Um, and put it like this: during some of those time frames when Egypt was in the fall of Egypt, and Egypt was already in a decline, they had been conquered by the Greeks. And we got to remember, Cleopatra wasn't 1% Cush Nubio. She wasn't Nubio Kemetic. She was half Greek, and she was a Ptolemy. So she had her more of her allegiance was towards the Greeks. So when the Romans came in and took over from the Greeks, so you got to imagine they had already been occupied by the Greeks um, for a while, and then the Romans came in and they took over from the Greeks. They were already in a submissive position. So Cleopatra, Kemet wasn't even Kemet no more back then. It was a vassal state of the Greeks, and it had been before she was born. Uh, shit, one of the ways that let me and Angelina will probably do this as a really did you know on her channel. Really did you know? She just did one where she was talking about how um, in the battle with Ukraine, the Muslim soldiers, they put out information to the Muslim soldiers that they grease their bullets with pig fat, so that, and told them that if we shoot you, you will not get into heaven because you can't. And they used that psychological warfare. It wasn't for something brand new. I forgot which group the Kemetic people were fighting, the Egyptians were fighting, but I think it might have been Ottomans or some Arab group, but they put cats out in front of the Egyptian of their forces. Many of the Egyptians wouldn't attack because if they killed a cat, it would keep them from going into the underworld and going into the field of reeds with Osiris. We ain't that religious no more. People aren't as we don't have those levels of superstitions within our religion uh, back then, as people had back then. You can't put cats, so you can't come out with crosses and shit in front of like let's say the Caucasians had a bunch of crosses coming down in front of them. That shit ain't gonna work. Just like it didn't work with black men in Vietnam and Korea and World War II. Them trying to get black men to not fight for America. Shit didn't work. That type of psychological warfare is not gonna work. Um, no. And then I use their book against them. According to the Bible, it says that whatever government that is appointed over you is the government that God ordained. And since we're in the midst of a civil war and you're on this side, this is the government that God ordained to be over you. So get to fighting. Do you think the use of religion has been effective tool to make people go fight wars? Oh yeah, in the past, yes. In the past, religion was easily used to convince people to go fight wars. Americans are not fighting a war over religion. That America is just not that religious in reality. It's just not. In peacetime, sure, they go to their church, they hoop, they holler, they do all this stuff. But wartime comes, Americans ain't religious. No. Before you went to your camp location, you had a briefing. The first thing we were told is that we were told, first thing we were told, and we were told this over and over again: do not engage with any local activity. This is not our problem. I saw women and children being shot. in their heads, and my dudes, and they were all praying. And I'm assuming the next who was going to get shot was rocking, I guess, praying, and she still was getting shot. Yeah. Some of these, now you have some of these people who are so religious, they ain't going to do shit. They're going to sit there, they're going to pray and all that. Just like those 80 people who stood in front of the so-called church, the church in Ethiopia that claimed to have the Ark of the Covenant, and them rebels gunned all 80 of them down. You'll have some of that pacifism, religious stuff, but the overwhelming majority of people are holding on to this body as much as they possibly can. And like I said, most people are sheep. Push come to shove, I put this gun in your hand. Either you're going to fight with us or I'm going to shoot you. One or the other. Either you for us or you against us. The guy didn't do nothing for them. They shot. They all dead. They all got unalived, as they say nowadays. Yeah. These Middle Eastern countries, some of these East African countries, religion will cause some people to do stupid shit like stand in front of that building when face down with guns. We fight in a war in America. Ain't nobody, is very few people are going to be standing out there telling something, you're not coming inside this church. God has shit. Think about it. We got a history in America where they blew up black churches, set them on fire. We ain't that religious. We just not. If Americans were that religious, then we would be a more pacifistic country. They wouldn't be putting up with all these wars and shit that we keep getting ourselves involved in. We like our resources. We like the fact that we can get up on this morning, you can ride and go to Chick-fil-A and get your food through the drive-through and do all the things that you want to do. Go to the grocery store, go to whatever shops you want to go to, concerts and all that kind of stuff. You know, look at that. You know, Americans on TikTok showing all the ass and all the chest and, you know, acting stupid, doing the NPCs, and America's about getting money and resources. You know, most of those countries are still, even though their governments might be somewhat democratic, they're still theocratic. Like, yeah, Russia is not that way. China ain't that way. America ain't that way. Most of Europe is not that way. South Americans, a little bit, they're not that way. They're a little more towards the middle. It's not as many countries that are super religious. Now, some of them have screwed themselves over. Like, let's say we was fighting against Saudi Arabia. I would literally use that same tactic that the Ukrainians use. Hey, we put everything in pig fat. These frag grenades, all the pieces been bathed in pig fat. Those kinds of people are the ones who are going to have that issue. Americans just believe that, most Americans who are Christians, they're like, oh, well, you know, if I die, I'm saved by the blood of Jesus. So I died and I'm in a soldier for the army of the Lord. They ain't thinking there's no, oh, if we kill you this way or that way, or if you kill this person. Think about it. Most Americans who read the Bible, they separate killing and murder. It's okay to kill. It's not okay to murder. They have that separation, and believe it wholeheartedly. That's why the government can get us into any of these wars. So we good. We good. Black women would not be our Achilles heel. If anything, black women are going to be one of our foundational strengths. Black women will be black women are more resourceful than white women. And I'm not trying to be racist in that statement. It's just a true thing. More black women have grown up with parents and grandparents who had to be resourceful because of the nature of society at the time. they will be more resourceful. And those resources will enable us to fight better. Yeah, you can't be a superpower if you're super religious. That does not work in this time frame. That after 1800, after around 1700, that started diminishing after the 1700s. Hell, if America was still religious, it would have never broken away from England. It would have never broke away from England. Mexico would have never broken away from the Spanish. None of those countries would have broken. It wouldn't have broken away from the Portuguese. Religion takes a backseat to money. Is that a Kenyan bracelet? Uh, Not to my knowledge. I don't know which one you're talking about, but none of them to my knowledge. They're just ones that I saw in the store and I like them. Yeah. And see, a lot of those people, wars are not started by the majority. Wars are started by a minority number of people. The majority of people in the American colonies um, did not want to separate from England. But because of the minority of those who were in power decided that's what they wanted to do, the people followed. So in order for that to happen, if the leader, let's say we take over these southeast states, straight up legal, still part of America. If the leadership starts becoming more and more disenfranchised with government, and then the business owners become more and more disenfranchised with the federal government, the people are going to follow those people's thought process on separating. So as that starts happening, then those people are not going to say, oh no, because of my religion, I got to stay with the federal government. No, they're going to look at the government and the people and the leaders that are in front of them, that are in their community. That's who they're going to follow. And it's only a few. You only need a few people to start a movement. God is bigger than any book, building, or country. He ain't bigger than money, though. He ain't bigger than survival. Yeah. You can't, and it'll have to be serious levels of oppression. Like, let's say we move into the Southeast and we start controlling all the police forces and all that sort of thing, and we're being treated fairly, equally, but they want to come and disrupt that. And then we start seeing problems with that. And they want to take that freedom, that safety away. And these people ain't going to be trying to hang on to, oh, you want to revert us back? No. I left the North because of that bullshit. I came here because I wanted a safer haven for my kids. I came here because I wanted more financial stability. And you messing with my money, and you messing with my safety. God has told us to fight this war, is what they would say. Say God is only in books and imagination. Show me that God you're talking about. Yeah, I can make up a God today, and in 1,000 years from now or less, people be worshiping that God. I can write a book, but it is, oh shit, it's almost 2 o'clock. Y'all not got me started, got me going, tricked me like them jokers did a couple of days ago. What was that, Saturday night? Had me here 20, 30 minutes longer than I should have been. So we're going to end this discussion today, and tomorrow is Wednesday. Tomorrow, Wednesday, is an open conversation. I'll start out with a few subject matters, and then we'll go from there on our lives tomorrow. But I appreciate everybody who continuously shares the channel, shares the video. Please keep sharing. Please keep commenting. Uh, I love the comments. I love the shares, and I think it's going to be interesting what people say who listen to this video in the aftermath. And I do go back and I try to read most of those comments as well. Um, I got a couple other videos I need to shoot today, so I got to shoot those. But I appreciate you guys, and I look forward to our next encounter, which will be tomorrow. And you told me you called me about. Did you send me your information? Did you like send it through the IM thing? Let me hold on. I gotta satisfy this issue before I leave. Before I get off here. All right, so let me cut you. All right, TikTok. Appreciate you. I'm gonna cut TikTok off because I need my phone.
US is doing absolutely nothing. And see.
Hold on. I can't get off this thing until I make sure I have Anthony's information. So I went into the comments. No, that's the wrong one. Anthony. Oh shit! You know what? You did send it. I didn't see. I didn't see it. That comment that comes up, that's an automated response. All right. So soon, if you got time right now, Anthony, as soon as I get off this thing. So YouTube, appreciate you guys. I will see you guys tomorrow.